I want to call to order the October work session of the Danville Board of Education. Thank everybody who's here tonight for joining us. The first item on our agenda is the finance update. Ms. Campbell, I guess you get to lead us off.
Yes, I just wanted to give you a couple of comments about the audit review. They have completed their work. They're finishing the final book put together, but our financial statements all came out fairly stated. We're going to get a good audit by our independent work. The schools have just a few comments about the meeting with principals, but you will go with those tomorrow, and you will get a formal report at the November board meeting. But just want to let you know it's complete and it's good.
Okay. All right, so we'll look for that in November. Next is the KETS offer of assistance.
This is a standard offer that we receive every year. So for those that are new and may not know, the state sends us an offer of assistance for our technology program, and it's a dollar for dollar match. So we have that in our budget. So we need board action at the next meeting to match the offer of assistance, which the first offer is $14,668, and then they will match that dollar for dollar. We will get an additional offer later in the year, and maybe 2 additional offers. But the first one is actual board action, and then that subsequently approves the next 2 when they come.
So that'll be on the agenda Monday?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What was the amount?
$14,668.
All right. Anything else on that? Any questions from anybody? All right. We'll see that on Monday. The next item on the agenda is staffing.
Staffing, we have 2 positions. Tolliver Council's creating 2 instructional assistant positions. And those are funded by Tolliver money. So those will be, the board would be asked to approve those on Monday night.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about any of that? See that on Monday. Okay. Next is facilities. First is elementary redesign. Is Eric going to?
He's right here.
Eric?
All right, thank you. Tonight I have Michael Mays with me. He's with my site department. He's been doing a lot of the site design. And also with us tonight is Stephen Sewell from Palmer Engineering. Back in May, we did some traffic count studies at Tolliver and the other 2 elementaries, and this summer and then early this fall, we've been working on doing a traffic study with that. We met about a month ago with Earl, with the city, and also Ed McKinney. Was at that meeting where we kind of looked at the traffic study as they kind of looked at it and made some tweaks. And I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to kind of talk you through what our findings were on the traffic study for the redesign of Tolliver Elementary. And then after he's done, I've got some other updates for you too. So I'll turn it over to Stephen.
I got a short presentation. There's some videos that I'm going to show you all that kind of show what traffic is, what you can expect to see out there with the changes. And then any questions, or some recommendations, and any questions you all may have. As I said, my name is Stephen Sewell with Palmer Engineering. The traffic study basically consisted of counting 5 intersections, basically West Lexington Avenue, at Maple and Harding Street, Perryville Street, on both sides of Maple and Harding, and also at Maple and Main Street. And we did those. The counts were done last May, before Center got out, so all schools were in session. Should have been what you see on a typical worst-case scenario. That was one of the big things, was making sure we got everything in session, nobody on break or anything like that. So what I have, we did AM counts and PM counts. So we did morning when school, everybody was coming to school, and then we did the afternoon when school was dismissing. What you're going to see is that the AM is by far the worst, just because everybody's trying to go to work, all your commuters are coming in downtown. Schools, also everybody trying to get to school. The PM, where they kind of don't, people leaving work, going home, doesn't coincide with schools getting out. So the PM is really not your critical time period. The AM is by far the worst. So this, it's kind of hard to see, but you'll notice that on the cars are backed up to about right here in the AM peak. When we met with Earl and with Ed, everybody felt that was pretty representative of what traffic does in the morning at the school. The one thing that You'll also notice that cars have problems getting out here. I'm sure that there's nice people that let cars out, and so the model doesn't play nice. It just says, is there a gap to get there, or is there not? But it kind of clears out, and it backs up some more, then you see cars start stacking up, having a hard time getting out. But everybody felt that was pretty representative of what happens out there in the mornings currently. The PM, in the PM, we can't model. I know people get there early in the day and stack up and wait for kids to get out. There's no way of modeling that activity. So what we've done is we've showed people coming in and they drive really slow through. We kind of took how long it would take a car when we're out there doing counts, observing how long it took for somebody to maybe get through that, and then tried to time it so that it was represented as close as we could of what it's like. In the PM, I mean, cars back up in here, but there's really no way to model it. I think the solution that we're going to have going forward will make it better, but it really doesn't show a whole lot of traffic. There was some backups in here in the PM, and some up on West Lexington that we noticed, but they weren't significant compared to the AM.
There are some days though that I've waited in line, and I mean, I'll be all the way up, waiting in line before Tolliver, almost to Maple.
Up this, you're talking about.
Towards Lexington, sorry,
Okay.
on Maple toward Lexington.
In the afternoon? Yeah. And the day we were there, there was a little bit of backup. There wasn't. I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I don't know if it's a hit or miss thing. We were only there for one day in the morning and afternoon. We were actually there 2 days. We had to come back and do some counts down here also. One of the concerns was people coming out of here and trying to turn either left or right and just backing up. It was really one of the areas we wanted to focus on, trying to make sure we could keep people moving through those schools. So when we went to the proposal, we looked at several different scenarios. The scenario we have now, basically, you would still come in the same spot. There would be 2 lanes that would go in front of the school. They would drop off here, and then they would exit out on Perryville Street. And we looked at going, if you just let people go whichever way they wanted to go, and this just becomes almost it becomes gridlock. What happens? People can't get out, it backs up all the way through. So what we're looking at is making this a right turn only when you exit. And that seemed to actually make traffic operate better than what it does today, even with more students there. You'll notice the cars are driving super slow. That kind of times people would actually stop and drop off. It's a pretty close representation of what it takes for somebody to go through and drop their kid off and then go on out. Like I said, we're modeling a worst case scenario with only 1 lane going through. There would be 2 for stacking, allowing people to get off the main road in the AM. You'll notice that this is the same time as the other one, and you'll notice that a lot of traffic along Lexington Avenue on Maple is gone. It allows it to clear out because you don't have this congestion with people coming out right here, turning left, and then trying to get into the signal to go down to Main Street. And I can rerun these if anybody wants to watch them again. And then the PM is the same way. Like I said, there's no real way of modeling people coming in 30, 40 cars being sitting there right when school gets out. You can only model how many cars come out during that period of time. But the same thing, people would go right. This would be a right turn only. And like I said, when we met with Earl and everybody seemed to feel that it was representative of what would happen based on the existing.
Did you find that a lot of cars were turning left when you were watching the traffic pattern? Because it's a right-only turn right now.
Out of here, I didn't count that intersection. I was up here. So I don't know if
Because it's right on, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I just combed it off this year. Thank you.
So some of the adjustments that we've made was down on Perryville, and this was at the suggestion of Ed and also Earl, instead of everyone turning. Okay. When they got here, one of the things that they originally had was everyone going up, or like 95% going this way. At the suggestion of Ed and Earl, they went more about, what is it, 60-40 or 50-50 split, with people turning right and also turning left, and we figured the people that were wanting to get back out and go west would go around, loop around, and go out this way, or come around and exit that way, versus trying to go all the way up, you get through this intersection again and going that way. So again, that also helped the model a little bit too.
We based that on, when talking to Ed, he kind of felt the way most people would go based on coming from the different elementary schools that are coming up here with Hogsett and Jimmy, Rogers. And we can, he was able to kind of tell us which way people he thought would go and that kind of. So our recommendations are to definitely do the ride in, ride out. It sounds like based on that, we're already doing that. And once everything is in place, to approach the state about modifying the signal times up at, on Lexington Avenue and at Main Street on Maple Avenue. The signals, timing wise, could use some adjustment now, but I think that they probably want to wait until everything's in place, see what's happening, and then at that point in time, make their adjustments. In talking with the transportation captains, that's one of the things that they said that they would do.
Is there any conversation on making that section one way? Is that worth having a conversation about making that section one way? Because I think that no matter how much you restrict traffic out, if there's room, and folks see the shortcut, it would be nice for people to leave their cones. We got a chance to build a campus. I don't know if there's any way to take that right turn only here in such a way that it's impossible to turn.
One of the things that I think we've done to maybe help that is we could not have a big radius, so it makes it a little more difficult, but people are still going to make the left if they have the chance.
Yeah, I
Or
think,
unless it's one left.
yeah. I mean, right now, it's basically a T intersection.
Right,
But
but
this
this
time,
time,
we got
on the side of the street, it's not like we're talking about interrupting traffic for 16,000 folks. Like, I wonder, is it worth having the conversation, or is it unnecessary?
Something that we could bring up to Earl and suggest that would be more of a city's decision.
Can't you put barriers in that road to make it impossible for people to turn left? You know, how you could have some kind of, it just seems like sometimes there's something in the road that makes it like, you know, like poles sticking up or something where you absolutely can't, you can only turn right out of there, coming out of the.
I think there could be situations where people might want to turn, I mean, when, other than the peak hours.
It would be okay to turn
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, other than when school is getting out or people are coming in the morning, there's not any, if it's 1 o'clock and somebody's coming to pick up a sick kid or something, then, you know, there would be no problem with them making a left turn.
And I think over time, people will find the easiest way to get out, whether it's going back out party and going out Maple or down Lexington to get, and come back downtown that way, or depending on which direction they're going, they're going to turn down and go south on Harding, either come back to that intersection of Main Street, or what Earl, we ever say, maybe some of them actually go through center down and come up, but, or back into downtown. But with this, it kind of helps disperse the traffic a little bit and have multiple different ways of getting around to different parts of town versus following everyone through the same pathway.
And y'all are talking about there would be 2 lines of cars, correct?
There's 2 lanes of traffic across the front. So you can have a park line, and then if you need to, someone can pull out and go past if you get a person that's waiting. But, or you could work with the system. I think what we do now is like 5 to 7 cars come up, stop, unload, and then next, is that how that's currently working?
Yes. And in the morning, afternoon, we double stack, load 2 lanes.
Okay. And then the exit lane, I think, is just a single lane. So it's not the 2 lane going out, so it kind of restricts itself where the parking lot kind of brown area comes back into.
Right
there. Because if you do have 2 lanes, then you have that tendency that left turn wants to make a left turn, the right turn, we'll make a right turn. So by going down one lane, you kind of, in the way we've got it designed, you want to be taking the right-hand turn.
Well, Susan, and I don't know, I haven't paid great attention to it in the afternoon, but it seems to be less. Fewer cars on Maple.
Well, I think
That's,
they
we
moved
changed
up
the
drop-off.
procedure. We're
Because they
pulling
had-
about 10 to 12 more cars off of Maple Avenue by moving the pickup line further
Forward.
toward the exit.
Yeah, I mean,
It's much better.
it's been amazing how many fewer cars there are.
Yes.
And it should make it better because now I don't know exactly where, somewhere in here, you're only able to stack up, this distance. With this, now you'll be able to stack up all the way back through there too.
Do we have any anticipated count on how many drivers or cars we're gonna have?
That's,
I mean, have we actually done a car count now?
What we did was we did a car count or I guess we provided information at all three schools of how many drivers drop off in the morning and how many drivers pick up in the afternoon at each of those schools. And we took those numbers and added them all together. So we also backed it up a little bit in that, to be on the safe side, there was some discussion on whether more people would ride buses. We thought conceivably what we felt was that since it was a little bit longer bus ride, we put more people bringing their kids to school. And so we kind of had that factor of safety in there that even though we had, say we counted 53 cars at Hogsett, I think we're at about 78 or something like that, or 80.
How many cars did we have at top of start with?
At Tolliver, there was 53
Okay.
in the morning coming in, and in the afternoon there was 30.
And then we anticipate adding how many more?
We'll add, in the morning, we'll add 55 that were at Jenny Rogers and 92 on 7. So a total of right at 200.
Which that's still hard to tell though, because you don't know how many of those kids are second through fifth grader. You could have the majority of those being, that could be going to different schools, so it's really hard to know. I mean, I know just even at Jenny Rogers over the years, it would change from year to year, I mean, based on the kids that were there. So that's, I mean, it does give you an idea, but it's still hard to know how many of those kids are what grade.
Yeah.
Ron, Judy, I sense an objection on the numbers.
Well, I have 84 car tags currently issued, minus maybe 20%, give or take 10, 15 to 20% on pickup, so.
Just for that puts you pretty close to the 53 that we
Well,
counted.
you think you originally stated 30
Third, for pickup.
for pickup, 53 drop off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had 53 drop off, 30 we counted for pickup.
On that road angles out and comes out on Perryville, is there any reason why that road couldn't just keep going straight to
going straight into Harding.
straight into Harding? And then we don't have to worry about one-way street?
I think the advantage of having this here is that it gives them the flexibility to go this way and this way once you get to the intersection. It's a right out. But if you have it here, instead of, then you're kind of forcing everybody to go this way, or if they're making a left, they're going back down. I mean, it probably is.
The other nice thing about it is it helps get the traffic a little bit away from the bus entrance.
Right.
Right now, if you were to bring that straight through, then you got cars and buses crossing where you've got to, if you're on Perryville now, you're getting metered out a little bit. It kind of reduces that and slows down that chance of someone pulling in front of a bus as they're trying to turn in. So that'd be my, other thing I would want to consider,
Right.
looking at trying to take all the traffic out to, onto Harding.
Well, plus Harding is narrower.
Yeah. And it's,
And that's, no matter even with car radius turns that would be.
Yeah, we've asked the city to also improve your side parting in terms of the curb cuts and the edge, like
The shoulder conditions.
shoulder condition, yeah.
Definitely something's got to be done.
Square later, just gravel shoulders. And something Earl said that he would put under consideration for development for this project.
Along with a section of sidewalk along Perryville. One other item that we asked them to take a look at. Two main issues, well, actually three, I think, curb cuts and the shoulders, parting, and then the sidewalks. So those were the three things that we asked for in the city. So ideally, I mean, in all of this, we really wanted to separate the bus and the vehicle traffic thing. That's what we're showing. Well, we took it out on the Perryville, but also the fact that, you know, modeling this with 2 lanes of traffic coming in, 1 lane going out, giving a dispersal of different avenues to get away from the school and getting more around the traffic congestion that is the intersection with Maple and Main Street. I mean, I think it shows that what we've been planning does work, or should work, let's put it that way. I mean, like you said, Paige, you know, you open the school up and it's going to be, let's see what happens, and you really can't model it on the first week or 2 of school. You're going to have to let it jive down and let people settle into the routines of, okay, maybe I'll let my kid ride the bus, or maybe it's, if I get here 5 minutes early, I can drop them off and get going, or is it too much traffic, you know, time, you get caught, so I'll just let them ride the bus. So,
What's the anticipated route of the buses? Are they going to be a right turn only?
There was some discussion.
Ed was talking about having them coming up and down Harding, not really coming down Maple and turning, but they can come in the back way on Harding and go north and turn in. If they're coming from the south part of town, if they're coming from the north or east, they'd be coming down Lexington, and dropping down Harding and coming in that way, and then also dispersing back that same way.
Do they enter from the bottom side?
They would come up Harding and enter in this way and exit out that way, and then they have the decision whether they go right and go up out Lexington or go south and go out and around and take the route. That way it also helps disperse the traffic and that intermix. You really don't want them running down Maple with all the other traffic or coming down Perryville. So that's what he was seeing, that he would choose Harding as a north-south axis for all buses to come in and out of. And then once they get down further away from the building, that way, or on Harding, they can disperse.
I just have concerns with turning radius on bus. I used to drive a bus. And Harding was always the most interesting street, that whole area. So you take a 70-passenger bus, and they're supposed to make that turning radius, right?
That's why you see such broad angles here, and you look down here and up here, the turning radiuses are a lot smaller for cars. So buses could make that loop, but it's not designed. You know, the idea is stacking 5 or 6 buses back here, double stacked, and then letting them go out. And Ed already said they're making turns up here on Harding onto Lexington. So.
I mean, I guess at some point, you know, we would, we address this with Keith at Center, because it's going to be a lot more traffic on their campus right there, where they're not used to having school buses and extra. So, I mean, you know, that's, other than just being really aware.
Don't worry, they're Greeks. It's not a problem.
It just is a lot more traffic, so I guess they're going to know that's going to be a lot.
It's gonna be a lot more, but I think a lot of people do right now take that
Kind of
bus down
down
to
through
Harding
there.
and go under the viaduct.
They do.
And then come back up.
So it's not going to be.
Yeah.
Do the buses already take? They don't do that, do they, right now?
No.
So I don't see that.
Yeah, I know it's not here, and he asked me to stand in for him again, but so I can't answer that part of
Yeah.
transportation that he knows so well.
One of the things we noticed was at 8 a.m., there was pretty large volume of traffic that was coming out of what should be Center, and I can't imagine that those people from Center leaving.
I mean, once you get away from your campus, you really can't.
No, I just think just, you know, making sure they on
Yeah.
campus are aware, you know, that there's gonna be more traffic, and especially with buses and stuff, but,
Yeah, we had a good meeting, you know, Ed was a part of that meeting with the role of the city, so I mean,
Yeah.
the city's fully aware. You know, it's a good question for Weather Center.
I mean,
Who
you know,
are
just their
receptive to the product?
transportation, just let, I mean, I
Okay.
would think that would be something, but, some time on that.
So really, we're not asking you for any action on this, we just want to present it to you, as a, you know, because the city originally asked us to do a traffic study because of the impact of the additional students and traffic on here, so that's what we're basically showing you, is that it has a minimal impact on the surrounding traffic or streetscapes. In fact, we hopefully might have improved it a little bit, taking that road, turning it back a little further down Perryville. Any questions for Stephen?
What's the next step of the city?
We'll submit them a traffic study, later this week. Once we've got the traffic study written and done. And based on that, Earl, I didn't think it was gonna have any issues with that.
No, just that little tweak there at the end of Perryville, adding more people to go south, you know, maybe more of a 50-50 split on that. I think that was his one main comment on that.
It still has to go to, we still have to send it to KTC also, to the State Transportation Academy, which will look at their, we'll provide you all the reports, but that's the middle also later this week, so.
Any other questions? Thanks.
All right, just give you a quick update. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, while we're on facility, though, the email with the 2 change orders on the track.
Okay, I talked to Greg, we can deal with that next meeting, unless, is that all right? I mean, I'll give an update on the track. Yeah, the track project, they are continuing to put down rubber. They had a good week last week, and looks like a good weather week this coming week to get that rubber finished by the end of the week. Will be coming back early next week to stripe the track. So Keith, I'd like to get a meeting, when we get that scheduled, probably Monday or maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, I guess. Let's wait till later in the week with your AD and your track coach, just to make sure how they're gonna put the lanes down and any colors, we'll get their input on. So that's how that's going. The tennis courts will be starting to be paving tomorrow. They'll put down the base course tomorrow, and then the finished grade, the finished topping course on Wednesday. Then it's got it set for 2 weeks while the hydrocarbons burn off. So, and then 2 weeks they'll come back and start painting some court colors. In between times they'll be doing the fencing, so you'll be seeing the fencing starting up next week. So that's probably about a 3-week schedule to get that project complete. Hawkshead, I know last week they probably got 2 or 3 areas of the roof done. It was a great week because of the fall break. They really were able to get down and get a lot of stuff on the inside of the elementary, or on the inside of the media center done, some piping. Any updates? You probably know more about than I do right now, so.
Well, what you said is true. They were able to do some of the interior work last week when there were no students. So that was helpful. They've completed all of the interior plumbing work, and they're proceeding with the roof.
Yeah.
Kind of section by section, they tear off a section, replace it.
Yeah.
Tear off a section, replace it.
So it's like this table is divided, you know, there's a be like a roof drain in each of these tables. They would do that section only, get that done to where it would drain, and then they would move on to the next day to do that one. So as they step, they don't leave anything exposed overnight. So at the end of everything, they come back with a topping coat and do everything together. So that should be wrapping up, I would think later this week or early next week on that. I had a call to Tri-State Roofing this morning, and I haven't heard back from them to get an update on that one. So that's the update on any questions on the 3 projects that we have ongoing right now. So on the elementary redesign, we have on the schedule for next Monday to try to get a CD level approval. We are working on our cost opinion this week. We'll be wrapping up things Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe a good idea of where we really sit overall, and hopefully it'll be good news. The question really becomes, do you want to have a special board meeting to really sit down and go over the plans as a group or individuals, and then have a special board meeting to make that approval versus trying to do all that at the regular scheduled board meeting on Monday. So
You mentioned that could be a 2 to 4 hour conversation.
it could be on how deep you want to get into the drawings, you know, in terms of MVP items, architectural items. You know, people can come and go during it. And I could, if you want to hear about certain things, I could tailor it just to that. I mean, I could easily fill up a 4-hour morning talking about the drawings and making sure everyone knows what's in and out. I mean, it gets a little long, a little dry. talk about all this stuff. But, you know, it's where your comfort level wants to be.
I say special meeting.
Well, and it seems like that if you guys can do that, get through that cost stuff and talk with the staff and the advisory group or whoever about how that looks and what
Mhm.
issues may
Yeah.
come from that, and get it to that point, and just based on the timing of whenever that happens, I think we could just kind of be flexible. as a
Yeah, because I
board.
would think sometime next week we'd want to have a special board meeting, because in terms of the timing, KDE needs 2 weeks to review it. When you look at the whole schedule, we need to be out to bid by November 17th, right before Thanksgiving. That way, we've got it out there for 3-4 weeks, and we receive bids on, I think, the 19th. I might get my dates slightly off, but we want to receive it right before, the week before Christmas. And then we have that week until early January to review it, and then you have with Joy in terms of the bond sales by mid-January, I believe. That sets up everything in terms of all the approval process, because we also, once we have the bids, we'll have to have another special board, or probably a special board meeting to approve those bids, to send them to the contracts to KDE. So there'll be some things in that area too. So like that. So we're trying to keep in with hitting bond sales. That's the critical part to all this. You start stepping everything back. That's kind of how we got into this.
Okay. So we'll just kind of monitor how
Yeah,
things
I'll-
go this week. And
Yeah, I'll give you an update,
Yeah.
or let Keith and Ed know where we stand in here later in the week with the cost opinion.
Okay, so, and we'll just keep everybody aware of how that's coming along and when we can take the steps we need to take.
Okay. Any general questions on that? Good luck. All right.
All right, thanks, Ed.
Thank you very much.
All right. Are there any other facilities topics? Okay.
Oh, Joy, you want, I just thought about the change orders.
Well, we'll need 2 items on the board meeting next week for change orders for the track. One was a deduct of $1,530 because there were some areas that did not need pavement. Got that right?
Yeah, the running long jump and the pole vault, when they stripped off the existing rubber, they felt that asphalt wasn't good enough shape just to go back with the new cover coating. So we got a little bit of a deduct. I think it was $1,500. And then the other one is for a trench drain, or a French drain around the back of the high jump. There's a small section between the high jump and the track where we kind of shorten the track, kind of squeeze it up. Danny is concerned with water shedding off the high jump area and sitting, ponding on the track area. So what we're going to do is put a French drain, so gravel drains, open perforated, and there's a storm structure right around the corner, about 150 feet, 100 feet roughly, to tie to that. So any water coming off the track and off the high jump will filter down through this and drain very quickly into the existing storm drainage structure. Because you don't want water sitting on the track. That's the worst enemy to a new track. We spent a lot of money on that track, so let's protect it. With that, I think we're a little bit over our contingency, I think by about $800, so I think Joy.
But I think we're still okay on budget because I looked at the printing cost we have.
Okay.
Budgeted amount set aside for that. So
Okay.
we shouldn't need any other contributions.
And I don't anticipate any other change orders after this. We're pretty much done.
Quick question
Yeah.
about tennis courts. Is there any way to do anything with that hill to make it easier for the spectators?
Actually, I think Ed has worked out a deal. If you go out there now, there's a bench cut up
Okay, okay.
that they're going to pour a little bit of concrete so you can set some bleachers up, and it's right where the hill starts to crest. So they didn't have to do too much of a bench. So it's up a little bit, a little further away, but you know you're going to get nice elevation going down over the
Okay.
fence.
Yeah, they've already got it.
Yeah, they've already got it cut. I was just out there this afternoon. So that's not, that cost is not showing up in our, I think Ed's worked a deal out somehow, so I think yeah.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Thank
So
you.
we'll have those 2 change orders, Joy, on Monday, right? The 2 change orders?
Yes, please.
All right. Next is the 2016-17 calendar update.
We had Ed call a meeting, just a beginning meeting, wanted me to update the board. What he did was took the existing calendar, just kind of mirrored it for next year as a starting point for discussion. Feedback that he's gotten was people kind of wanted to see how this first, the fall break went, and then the first 9 weeks into the 9 weeks with the PD and the planning days built in, kind of to get that sequence before they gave their, a lot more input. Whoever jump in at any time also. One thing that we did look at was the spring break of moving it from March to the first week of April. He had talked with Royal County. They have not set their calendar at this point, so he said, we can set ours and then hope that they match ours, and, finagle that way so we have the same spring break again, but nothing's been set. And but he did want the board to know initially things have been talked about, discussed. They, the teachers at this point like the planning and like the PD built-in, but they haven't experienced it. So they're wanting to experience it, and then in November bring kind of a working calendar to you all to look at.
We also looked at the Christmas break. The way Christmas falls, we would actually be out of school like December the 15th, that would be,
Yeah.
Friday. So we looked at maybe going more into that next week and being off like the second / third.
Yeah, going like Monday and Tuesday that week and be in the 19th, starting our break instead of way back on the 15th, and then taking one of the days, and putting it after the first day.
It didn't look that bad if you just saw the week, the 2 weeks off with that December the 19th. When you looked at the actual date because of the weekend, it was actually like December the 15th. 16th.
All right, so we'll hear more about that next month after we've experienced the end of the 9 weeks.
Yes, and what he wanted to do is experience that and then pick it out to DDA and then principals to talk to faculty and get input and then pick it out to you all.
Right, okay. Good. Any questions or? Okay. Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
Next is the KTRS support resolution. Norma.
That's me. I just have a little resolution for just asking for support from our Board of Education and support for our KTRS, just trying to get it refunded. And it actually doesn't just affect the Danville Education members, it affects all employees. So, okay. And you don't have to do anything with it, just approve it, and you just show support of it. As you all know, our QTRS program's retirement system is in jeopardy, and we just need the state to step up and get that funded. It impacts all of us. And we really don't even have anything to fall back on, because in the mid-'80s, the windfall elimination program prevents us from accessing the Social Security benefits. And even it affects, like, my husband is not an educator, but if he were to die, heaven forbid, right now, I wouldn't even be able to access his Social Security benefits because of that windfall. I'd be able to access some, not all. And that's not really fair either, so we really don't have anything to fall back on. So we're just asking just for support and our efforts to continue with that, get that fully funded. Questions?
Any questions? So Norma, so KEA is trying to get boards everywhere to
Yes.
pass the same
Right, and I'm not
resolution?
sure who in the area has passed it.
So would this be something that we could just kind of consider for now and have on the agenda on Monday?
Yes.
For board meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And I won't be able to be here on Monday, but I should have a group that will be here.
Okay. All right, well, with that, definitely an issue that we're concerned about too, and we'll take a look at this and
Okay.
help
And feel
discuss.
free to give me a call, email me.
Okay.
Any questions.
All right, thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Who wants to explain what those items are?
I saw Monday night, there'll be some surplus items again, asking the board to declare surplus. The chairpersons, annually or every so often, we ask the board to approve chairpersons because they have the potential to allocate funds in an ARC or a 504 meeting. So we always bring those to the board so that you know who's serving in those positions. And then there are overnight trips. And one thing we got today was academic trips from Denver High School. There's a request for travel for those. So that could be added to the consent for Monday.
Okay.
What are the surplus items, or do you know?
I don't know. I'd have to check.
Some of them are technology items
Do you
like
have some?
old computers, old monitors, stuff that we can't use anymore.
There's a list of this attachment, is there any, I mean, is
Oh.
that?
Okay, there is an attachment, Brian, is that? Yeah, those are
Looks like it's
all,
all-
that's all computer stuff, because it's all Dell, so yes.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions on those? That'll be on the agenda on Monday. If anybody has anything between now and then, let them know. Next item is the K-Prep data review. I'm going to move so I can watch. That's why I'll charge my.
Well, please notice the use of the cart as opposed to dragging library furniture. I'm well aware, never tried library tax.
Let's get around you.
You know, there's certain policy rules. It's our opportunity to discuss school performance data. It's been released in the media quite a bit from lots of different aspects. I want to take some time to be able to walk through bits of our school performance, as well as make sure that folks understand how to navigate the school state report cards to know how to look up lots more questions on their own. This is a never-ending data analysis. So what we've got is at this point what we've been able to look at and analyze. We pass the baton quite a bit, start in central office and get data to schools, and schools take over the analysis, and ultimately trying to figure out the best ways for raising student achievement. So I want to start with giving this. Would you like for me to show you where to access school report cards? It's okay if yes is an answer. We all look at this sometimes differently. Yeah, want to see them? Okay, let me just show you that real quick. Through any web browser, quick display is to Google, initials KD, KY, school report cards. Usually will come up as a popular search. And from that, you get a link for our report cards. And you have the opportunity to do a number of different things from this site. Either look at an overall district report, look at individual school reports, or my favorite section is the data sets at the top, which are simply raw numbers that are spit out to you 100 different ways, so you then analyze and sort in a series of actions. So if you want to take a school report card, we can pick a school year, and you can look from any history of K-Prep years, beginning 11 and 12. So we'll do the current year. We can pick our district, we have the opportunity to look at any other district, and we can pick a school. Since we'll pick on J. Rogers now. And you then get a view of the school report card, and these are true for any of them. You get overall index numbers, and then a series of tabs that allow you to break your data down further, most of which is under issues of accountability, which includes overall profiles of points, and then ultimately where we get to what I find to be more useful information, the information actually about students. And we can look and see within areas of achievement. We can look all the way down to any series of subject matters. So whether it's reading, math, social studies, or writing. There are these cool triangles on the side that are worth clicking on, because every time you click on it, it expands down. Because looking at reading that's tested over 3 years in elementary school, grades 3, 4, and 5, as an aggregate number doesn't tell you all that much. But if you're able to look at third grade alone, or compare third to fourth, or fourth to fifth, you get a little more data. So we can click on by grade. And we can see by grade
how students are doing in any particular area. And then even within grade, for the geeks in us, we actually can break that down within the grade to the actual subgroups that exist. Why do subgroups exist? This is part of No Child Left Behind. This is still part of the federal legislation that exists for all schools in the country. So we're still looking to make sure that our subgroups are performing at or above levels of performance as prerequisites, still trying to reach proficiency. And so we have the opportunity to start to look at issues of growth. How do our males compare from 3rd grade in reading to 4th grade in reading to 5th grade in reading? How do special ed students look from 3rd grade in math to 4th grade in math to 5th grade in math? All the way through, any different series of subgroups. You'll notice that some of the smaller subgroups have asterisks or nothing by them. You have to have generally 30 as the number to officially have a subgroup, otherwise we simply tag kids to track from there. So we start to see where some schools will have lots of subgroups, some schools will have a few subgroups, again, legacies of NCLA. There's information about program review. If you go to middle school, you start to see information around the Explore. If you go to the high school, you get the plan and the ACT. It keeps expanding. The weights of each one are calculated in other documents. It makes this a little deeper. I'm going to try and give you the 30,000 to 5,000 foot views as you start to look at some of the data. And then again, for some of the folks, I do encourage you to look at the data sets. Again, from any school year. If you wanted to ever look more broadly across grades and districts and so forth, we actually can look at, for example, pick something. K-Prep by grade, and you actually will see it for across the entire state of Kentucky. And you can then look at any of the groups and compare, essentially, if you dive down deep enough, 3rd graders in this school, to 3rd graders in that school, to 3rd graders in this school in this district, to 3rd graders in that school in that district. Again, starting to look at issues of trends, because that's still more important than any single number or any single snapshot. Are we progressing? Are we regressing? Are we sustaining? And which students are seen to have whatever level of impact, positive or negative, and does that represent issue of trend or pattern? All right. Again, Google KDE school report cards, you pull it up. You can go back and look as much as you want and through these series of ones, and you can look at more than just our own district. It's all public and open information at this point in time for full conversation. All right, so let's look at that. This time, we've got all 5 schools are categorized as needs improvement, which I'll explain the threshold for that in just a moment. The Danville School District is recognized as a focused district. Bate Middle School is recognized as a focused school. And Danville High School, for the 2nd year, is recognized as a focused school as well. The consecutive years matters, and you'll see that in a moment as well. Here's the definition. To be a needs improvement school, you have to score below the 70th percentile in the state. Meaning that if you are at the 57th percentile, you're scoring at or above 57% of the districts at the time. The goal is to hit the 70% line. At that point in time, you cross the threshold and you're then a proficient district. If you cross the 90th percentile, you're then at a distinguished district. Our schools right now fall below the 70th percentile and therefore are categorized as needs improvement. You can be a needs improvement school, or district for that matter, persistently low achieving, a proficient or distinguished, and still be a focus, no matter what the category, because focus has a different definition. Focus district refers to, as you see, a non-duplicated gap group score in the bottom 10% of all districts. What is a non-duplicated gap score? It is any one of those subgroups that was listed on the screens earlier that is performing the bottom 10% of the district in this case. So if it is African American, special education, free and reduced lunch, limited English proficiency, if any one of those groups is scoring at the bottom 10%, then you earn the focus label. Focus school is the same category. It's an individual group of students scoring significantly low, which is what applies to us. The group in the bottom of the 10% of the state, or a graduation rate of less than 60 for 2 consecutive years. What you see in bold is what qualified our schools this year. Questions about definitions? Stop and ask. It makes a lot more easier. And I guarantee you, if you're thinking the question, there's 5 other folks that are afraid to ask it, and you can get the prize for being the one to verbalize. All right. This is a system of ranks, which we all hate to do. None of this was ever designed to rank schools. It was
all designed, in theory, for a school to compete against itself, for a district to compete against itself, to try and show achievement and gain. No matter what happens, it is often interpreted otherwise, and folks inevitably, if given a series of numbers, will put them in order to see what happens. And essentially, percentile rank gives us that same sort of identification. So when you take the districts in Kentucky and so forth, you see where things fall. Currently, we're 157 out of 173 as a district. The high school is 198 out of 228, and you can see the numbers from there. It's important to note that when it comes to the fearful end of state intervention, persistently low achieving status, it was initially identified as the bottom 10% of schools that qualify for Title I funds and the bottom 10% of schools that do not qualify for Title I funds. So when we start to see our schools get ranking numbers that get close to where a 10% indicator could occur, that's something that raises attention. Currently, the state has said that they are not identifying any new schools, particularly until they have the numbers out. And we also have a change in commissioners. And so that whole concept could be revisited as well. But we're at a situation, and there's a couple of spots that we need to pay very close attention because we are definitely testing the waters of state intervention. These are districts in the region. Just shows probably, how hard is that to see? Pretty hard. Luckily, okay. So what you see, I'm trying to get a magnifying glass. This is like David. So this is in inverted order. You see the rank. This was again, we were 157th. If you wanted to see where other districts in the region rank currently, you get to see where that falls. Note again, the 70 mark is what qualifies as proficient as a district. So here, for example, you see it. The Kentucky percentile rank was at 80, so these are proficient districts. Some are progressing, which also means they're making significant gains per time, and one district in our region has to be distinguished status. Elementary schools. There. You have the overall score of the school, which again, as a single number, doesn't really tell us much. Because again, it's an aggregate of 3 grade levels, multiple assessments, multiple measures, and multiple disciplines. At the same point in time, the overall just gives you a perception of the picture. And there are definitely some schools in our area that have made some significant gains and have shifted the order from what has occurred in the past. Middle schools, same concept. You see the order. The number next to them is where they would fall in that rank, including everyone. Same idea. Overall score, where they are for percentile. You see, as soon as you hit that 70 or plus % rank, which is the percentile rank, you then hit proficient. Anything above that moves to distinguished. Otherwise, it's needs improvement. And high schools. Same deal. Right over currently, which can't really see on the far end. The schools, the scores, and then once you hit the 70 mark, which would be a Mercer, is when proficiency kicks in. If you hit the 90 mark, which is what Gary, Lincoln, and Boyle, you earn the distinguished status. You may have seen in a series of articles, I think I sent some out to board members too, about some of the confusion regarding percentile rank, where in fact they locked in the rank from 2012, 2013, and didn't adjust the order of that for years following to try and help folks make sense of things, which actually only made it more confusing. So in fact, you actually can find 2 different ranks if you dig deep enough, one from where you would compare in 2012, 13, and one where you compare currently. It's a bit of getting into the weeds, but it's definitely part of the cleanup work moving forward because this year sets new percentile rank baselines, and hopefully the idea that it will always be among the current year as opposed to tracking back to years past. When you track back to years past, it's actually locked some schools into low performance that didn't deserve that label, and locked some schools into high performance that didn't deserve that label. So part of this becomes a political maneuvering on that. Our greatest concern still is student achievement. That is the most determining factor. Questions about this piece? Okay. Other numbers that we pay close attention to include some of our ACT and EPAS data. This gives you the region where we would fall in our overall composites, and this is the Explorer. This is actually moving left to right. I'll zoom back out here. It shows you the mean, which is, for example, in English, we had a mean of 13.7, and we had 51.5% of students met the English benchmark for career and college ready in the 8th grade year. For mathematics, it was a composite 14.1, and 21.5% of our students met the benchmark for readiness. And if we extend across, you eventually get all the way to the far right. That shows that our composite on the ACT Explorer was 14.5. You can see where that is in comparison to other schools that are our neighbors and where that falls in overall rank order. The rank order shifts a great deal when we move to the high school. Same deal. Take a picture. And we see, you can look also at the number of students tested. That also sometimes can have some weight. You can see that, for example, Bergen only tests 40 kids. So 5 kids one way or the other can wildly shift their scores. We're at 109, which is kind of towards the lower end, which also means a few kids can shift our scores really dramatically. But for example, our English mean score was 19, which meant that 55.5% of our students met the benchmark in English, and math was 18.7 for 33 or 34% met the benchmark. And if we take that all the way across, remember ours is in yellow, you'll ultimately see that our composite score is 19.5. And in our region, the score is significantly low. To look more deeply at the benchmarks, this gets back into the reports from the school report card. The blue line that you see there is only the deletion of subgroups that don't exist at the school. It is not a highlighting or underlining of any sort. It's me cutting and pasting. So for example, this is the 8th grade benchmarks for the Explorer. And we see that the number of students tested were 69 males and 59 females. And as a school, we see the percent of students that are meeting the English benchmark. So almost 50% of our guys and 56% of our girls met the English benchmark. You see them where that compares to state averages is what this column is. So we had 55.9% of our females did the English benchmark, and 68.8 statewide, 49.3 of males, 53 statewide. And this starts to give us a picture across. So we've got English, math, reading, and science, all 4 of which combine to try and create a picture of, at the middle school level, college and career readiness. There are a couple numbers that stand out that we have to pay close attention to. The lower the numbers is where we start getting into that. There are a number of columns where our special ed students, where there were none that met benchmark. For example, in mathematics, none of our special ed students met benchmark, none in reading, and none in science. Amongst African Americans, none in reading, none in science. Those are big things that we have to start to question, say, hey, wait a minute, what happened? Was there some other issue? What can we start to explain? What can we start to explore? So forth. And we start to make comparisons even among groups. How does our free and reduced lunch group compare to our males? How do African Americans compare to this group, and so forth? We start trying to create, if there are consistent patterns and trends that exist. We then do the same analysis at the ACT and the high school level. And the same kinds of questions. Where are we high, where are we low, and in what areas? And how do we compare to the state? You'll notice that there's always a column for district as well as for school, and you'll notice that those numbers are always the same. Because in our district, our high school is our district high school score. If we had multiple high schools, you would see one for Danville High School, and then a whole different report card for Danville High School South if it were to exist, and the two combined, then you would have a district result. But because we have one high school, it is in fact the same number for our district school. So you see the number of students tested across the board. We see the percent that are meeting benchmarks, and we go right down the list and see where questions are out. So for example, where white students hit the English benchmark at 72.5%, our African Americans are at 25%. Okay, that's almost 3 times. what does that say to us? What does that mean? How do we focus, and what does that mean is the best question to ask. We look to see how that compares in different categories to our free and reduced lunch population, to our students with disabilities, and at the bottom line in all of them is your GAP students, which takes all of the subgroups, non-duplicated, meaning, let me back up this way. If No Child Left Behind first came out, you could have one student qualify in multiple subgroup categories. If I was a Hispanic special education student that was also on free and reduced lunch, I would fall into 3 categories. And so if I scored high, it was awesome because I could raise your performance in 3 areas. If I scored low, it would hurt you because I would hurt you in all 3 areas. Currently, in the new K-Prep system, as long as I hit any one of those 3 categories, I'm only counted once in the overall GAP performance. So there's no duplication of my results or triple my results. No matter what I qualify in, whatever it takes, that drops me in one time as in the GAP category. So when we talk about non-duplicated, it simply means that the students here, the 78 that are here, qualify either by being special ed or free and reduced lunch or African American. Any one of those drops them into that category, but at no point in time are they counted multiple times. Now, when we talk about college and career readiness, there's a slight variation that looks at numbers that students have to be enrolled at least 100 days to count towards the school's overall rating. So these numbers are pretty close to the ones before, but if you see some slight number variations, because these are the ones that are actually with us for 100 days, at least 100 days. This is college and career ready, and it's the same numbers. And again, this is the percentage that meet benchmark period. And again, we look at some of the highs, we look at some of the lows, and where we see points to celebrate, we want to celebrate. Where we see low performance or things that we want to identify as key areas of focus. Same for the high school. Again, the blue lines are not highlighting or underlining anything. It's simply a cut and paste to narrow down, make it easier to focus. And then we get the focus identification. Before I go there, my questions about college and career readiness or benchmarks of Explore or ACT. Okay. So we'll give you a focus school. Remember, non-duplicated gap group, bottom 10% performance. So we'll start with the high school, and writing was the area of focus. Let me see if I can zoom into this just a bit. And what I've done first is look at the all students. And you see the percent novice. And in writing, you see all students was 20% novice, and you also see the state average there too. So where we're at 20% novice, the state average is 11.5%. You can get males, and we've got 31% novice and males, and the state's at 15%. But ultimately, you get down to disability with IEP, and you see that 78.6% of our students score novice in writing. That's then what triggers state to say, hey, wait a minute, red flag, district, make sure you're paying attention to this moving forward. So what I also want to do is then see, how does this look as a trend? So what we've done is taken the last 4 years to see how we've done with this. And then the bottom line is 2011-12, and 12-13, 13-14, and 14-15. We see our students with disability were originally at 66% novice, and have hovered between 66 and 62%. And again, we were identified last year as a focus group for this group, and we've actually had more students score novice. Again, it's a smaller population. You see the total count, it's 32 to 28 students. So a few kids can swing this pretty radically, but still is a sign for us that this is an area that needs intentional attention. That's the intention of, or the reason we chose the word focus. On the other end, you'll see, if you go across, it's percent apprentice, percent proficient, percent distinguished, and the state gives a combination of proficient, distinguished. So basically anything proficient and up. They also draw us an overall number in the setting of goals. So you have a way of knowing that from that line over is always something to be commended. We were also identified this year for the first time in social studies. Again, blue line doesn't mean anything. And we see again some different numbers from here. All students percent novice was 58.5%, state average 21. We can go down to African American students, which was one of the target groups of this identification. 87% of our African American students scored novice in social studies. Remember, this is the U.S. history end of course exam alone. When it comes to high school, we now get into the end of course exam conversation. So on the U.S. history test, 87% of our African American students scored novice. If we look at free and reduced lunch meal students, 75% students scored novice. If we look at our students with disability, 87% of our students scored novice. And the non-duplicated gap group was at 71% novice. The focus identification is primarily on the African American students in this particular measure, again, because it's bottom in the entire state as far as all schools and categories. So let's see what that trend looks like. And we see in general it's been an issue for a number of years. In 11, 12, it was 80%. 12, 13, it was 74%, and 50, and then 87. So again, an area of focus is just that. Something that we need to focus on to figure out how we're able to make sure that students have the ability to show what they know we're able to do in the area of U.S. history. At the middle school, the focus is reading. And this gives us all students first. And again, you get school results, you get district, which is exactly the same as the school because we have one middle school and district. And then you have a state school, at least to show you for comparison what it looks like throughout the state. So when it comes to reading, we'll start at the top with all students. We have 26% novice at the middle school, state average is 21%. With our African American students, it's 43.8%, or in the state it's 39%. And when we look at special education, it is 64, almost 65% of students scoring novice in reading. And that is at the state level at 52.3%. So we then look, okay, how does this look over time? Is it an anomaly? Is it a trend? How does this help us sort it out? So let's look at special ed over years. And again, beginning in 11, 12, where this K-prep began, this kind of assessments over time. And again, it's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade because reading is a test given every year. 11 and 12, we were at almost 60% novice. So you can see it's hovered between 60 and 65 over the 4 years of K-prep administration. If you look, the state novice percentages have somewhat declined, starting at 61% a few years ago, and then ultimately down, ideally 51.2 to 52.5. You see the variation between. And that earns us then the first year of focus identification for the middle school and reading. To remove the focus label, a focus school in the non-duplicated student gap group category, that's us, shall be above the lowest 10%, so there are others that can sink below us, must show improvement, we can do, and meet our annual measurable objectives for 2 years in a row. The state gives us those objectives based upon your performance level, where you need to be the next year and where you need to be the year following. If we meet those 2 years in a row, we remove the label. The bottom, if you look at D, talks about how a focus district, which is again we're also identified, in the non-duplicated student gap group category, we have to be above the lowest 10%. That's how, as a district, and we are evaluated annually for that. So we have to get particularly our special ed students out of the bottom 10% in order for our district to then be out of the focus label for Daniel schools. Questions about focus?
I just had one question.
Sure.
So ours was 67, whatever it was, we scored 64.2. Are they going to adjust that off of the 67 or what we actually perform for the next year? You know?
It'll get off the 67 one.
67.
You have to catch up. And
Got to go up, and you got to be a point now since we didn't meet the AMO. So it'd be 58, whatever.
So the longer it goes, the tougher, the bigger the leaps need to be, which also makes it it's one of those things, if you don't get on it quick, it can quickly swallow. Now, We also invested this year in a thing called the National Student Clearinghouse, which you find in many districts and states, because what it is able to do is take our student identification information and track what happens to those students when they leave high school as they enroll into colleges. It is by student number, and the National Student Clearinghouse does a count every, I think there's a date in October, that they look to see, okay, you say a kid graduated high school at whatever point in time, where are they in any college anywhere in the country in October? And it starts to figure out how many students actually enrolled, what their college persistence rates are, what the retention rates are, and how students progress through. Because ultimately, all of this work is about providing students opportunities to maintain and expand their right of self-determination after they walk across the stage and leave Danville High School. And while they can do many things after they choose to leave, one of which is college, as that has been a primary focus of our district. So it's worth us starting to pay attention to what kind of rates do our students have. And we're just beginning our analysis of this. We've just gotten the data. Poor David's been sending the numbers from, 7 years ago, because we've been trying to figure out, again, trends that we go through this, to really figure out where do our kids go and how do they do. So I would expect and hope to be able to come back to you guys another time and look at this data more thoroughly. But I wanted you just to see the connection as we extend all the way out to graduation and beyond. So this gives you a quick snapshot. So this line, which maybe you can see also a little bit, let's see if that helps, looks at the percent of students, here, mouse, first, the percent of students enrolled in college in the fall immediately after high school. So you walk across the stage in June, and you show up on campus in the fall, and you survive till at least, let's say, October 15th, okay? This doesn't count. At this slide, anyone who decides to enroll in January or has taken a year off or anything else like that, this is just a quick hit for us to begin to see the kinds of questions we can ask with this data and the kinds of analysis we can provide. And we see that fairly consistently, Danville High School students, when they graduate high school, 66% with great consistency enrolled in school and are there in fall. It's an interesting number because oftentimes we assume, as we have gotten students and our counselors have hustled and our administrators have hustled and our teachers have hustled to get kids accepted into a series of places. And this is sometimes where lots of different places can play some games with the numbers and talk about the percentage of students that are accepted into school with their graduating class, which is a very different number than the students who actually enroll come the following fall. So, and all of us have played that game at some point in time. And oftentimes as K-12, we figure our job, hey, we got you there, we got you in. Someone else has to pick up the baton and carry forward. And it's become now a national issue called summer melt, which is those students who are accepted as of June that never show up on campus in the fall, and whose responsibility is that, how we build interventions to support that work and so forth. But as a general rule of thumb for us, you look even as far back as 2010, we were consistently at 66%. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that up? Is that down? It's consistent, good or bad, we're still trying to figure out. We're trying to figure out what that means as well. The cool thing, as we dig a little deeper, this will also tell us not just four-year colleges, but this includes four-year colleges and two-year colleges. This includes all students, and we can even break this out by the same subgroups that Go Child Left Behind provides us. How do our males do? How do our whites do? How do our poor students do? How do our special ed students do? And we can look at that over that same period of trends because all that becomes available to us. So it's interesting data. Here is also interesting data because over that period of time, makes you wonder where the students go. And so what they've done, I'll do this in two sides. In rank order, where our students are most likely to appear. Most likely, EKU. Second most likely, UK. Third most likely, BCTC. Fourth most likely, Center. When you look at this also gives you the total numbers. So remember, EKU, UK, BCTC, Center. EKU, UK, BCTC, Center. You actually can get the numbers of kids there too. So you see the top three, EKU, UK, BCTC, combined, darn near are as much or more than all the other schools combined. Just interesting points of data to figure out where our 66% of students are most likely to land after they leave Daniel High School. And David, this is how many years?
7.
7 years? Okay. And it's interesting to see too, even on the other end, where Center gets 30 plus, let's say, then you look and see how other schools in the immediate area, Transy, Berea, Asbury, so forth, Kentucky State, Georgetown, also fall within that mix. And the kinds of things we do, we think about the relationships that we have. Does this mean in some places we've made very good connections? Are there missed opportunities? Are there other ways we can build bridges? Again, roles of pathways, roles of counselors, roles of teachers, roles of alumni, and trying to make sure that students have the most opportunities available to them as they complete their high school tenure. And then there's another chart. There are lots of charts. These are just one to show. This is, of that high school class who walks across the stage in June, what percent of them complete a degree within 6 years, be it 2 year or 4 year? So this means it doesn't matter when you started. You could have started immediately, you could have started a semester in, you could have taken a year off. 6 years after graduation, do you have a degree or not? And we see that as of class of 2009, remember 6 years later, which is what puts us to 2015, 34% of that graduating class has earned a degree, be it 2 year or 4 year. And you can see from the slope of that line, it's relatively flat. So it's not like we've had major shifts, and this is the class of 2008 was at 40%. So again, of graduating class, 66% enroll immediately. 6 years later, 34% of the original classes earn the degree. So 100 kids graduate, 66 are in school that fall. 6 years later, out of that 100, 34 have earned a degree, be it 2 year or 4 year institution. Again, another part of the analysis that we need to ask as we look to what does it mean to prepare a student to be college and career ready. It doesn't really include anything career related. This doesn't include a kid who goes immediately to workforce. It doesn't include military, none of that. Clearinghouse doesn't do that. But as we aim for college and we look at benchmarks along the way, we start to see how our students progress to reaching college. Useful data? Okay, good investment of our $425 to get? Thankful for David for sending them every individual student number to do this by hand so we can start tracking. Okay. All right, making sure you were there. I saw you. All right. Okay. So when we look at the issues and we've identified focus, that isn't to say those aren't the other points of concern or areas that need of attention. And primarily the conversation today is around 6 through 12 because it takes a while to dig this deep, and that's as far as I've gotten, as well as that we start again with the baton exchange and having folks pick up and do a lot of analysis at the end. K through 12, we're doing some deep analysis, and I'll show you the way in which we're doing it at the moment. But I wanted to give some other points of note, and I have intentionally left off the subgroup and the discipline, which I know makes it hard to read, but I did not want to be in the presentation and appear to be indicting any particular group or any particular group of teachers or even a school for that matter. It is a matter of simply saying that the issues stretch beyond just focus, and we therefore need to figure out to what extent does this weigh on our minds and our decision-making moving forward. So I will read this, and we can almost do the educational Mad Lib to fill in. Not trying to humor. So for example, less than 10% of one of our subgroup of students reaches their ACT benchmark for pick the discipline that is measured. So less than 10% of that group is benchmarked. 0 of a particular subgroup met college and career readiness for 2 different disciplines. The percent of students scoring at the novice level in a specific discipline actually increases as you move from 6th to 7th to 8th grade. Those are areas of concern as well, because again, it's not just about what the state identifies, it's part of our own analysis and our own responsibility to make sure that all of our students are benefiting from the academic programs we offer. If we do the same sort of look at the high school, we see this, almost 9 out of 10 students in a particular subgroup scored novice on a specific EOC, whereas 42% of their majority peers scored this low, and 3 out of 4 of yet another group scored that low. So in one particular area, we had 90% score novice compared to 43% compared to 75% in one particular area. Another one, where only 1 in 4, 25% of a particular subgroup, hit their ACT benchmark for a specific discipline, compared to 3 in 4 hitting that same benchmark of their majority peers. So again, non-subgroup. So 25% versus 75% hitting that benchmark. And at the bottom, while over 2/3 of the majority group are college and career ready, the opposite is actually true of the subgroup, where 2/3 of those students are not college and career ready. So while overall numbers show one thing, diving down, which is really the greatest legacy of No Child Left Behind, reveals the fact that we have still significant work to do in a series of different areas. Now, all this is public data. We all can go back and look up and fill in blanks from there. But for the sake of conversation, it's about trying to determine as a group the extent to which this is of concern and level of immediate attention to start figuring out how we do the appropriate addressing and having our schools reach proficient status. All right, so what does the data tell us? We've got a number of students that are leaving behind. White students as a majority group are performing higher than all the other demographics. And low-income students actually score higher than African American students across the board. Special ed students are scoring at the lowest point in the K-12 era. And only a third of our students that graduate from the Danville schools have an advanced degree within 6 years. So combined numbers, big picture, kind of tough. Implications. These are things to think about as we look at these schools. Something to note, the Danville schools poverty rate is actually higher than that of Jefferson County. Most people don't realize that. When we think about, we associate big city and those issues and so forth, we've got a lot to tackle here in Danville. And that's probably one of the greatest shifts that has occurred in this community over a relatively recent history. And therefore, something that draws our attention as far as kind of work. Now, low test scores are going to definitely affect our ability to recruit and retain quality staff. Low test scores can affect our ability to market the district in real estate sales. If you go on those real estate websites and you pull the schools, they all use a website that ranks the schools purely by the count, what do you call them, the standardized test performance, purely. There's no opportunity for anybody else to send in any other information that would influence the number on those charts. So if you're looking to move someplace and you pull those up, that's what you're going to get. Low test scores can hamper our community and economic development to recruit industries into the area. And it can cause definitely the education community to discredit district staff and board members. I will tell you that personally, these scores are tough. Even one being a little embarrassing. Because I know that as a district, I hate to see us portrayed in this light, no matter what it is, what any of us think individually or as a group of these kind of assessments. And I know that when teachers apply to us and go elsewhere, oftentimes they're asked to show their scores as the evidence of their work because it's the most universally fungible material we have currently in the state of Kentucky regarding education. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is a significant piece of that conversation. So I think I speak for a number of folks in the room, and we can test that theory too, as to the level of concern that this is not the picture necessarily that we wish to have of the Danville schools anyway. So my recommendations. First, and I'll read these to you, rather than pretend that I'm not going to read these to you. We need to refresh our instructional leadership and teachers in the knowledge of the Kentucky academic standards. This is still the driving direction instructionally for the entire state as legislated by our state legislature, Department of Education. It is the Kentucky academic standards through which we are all committed to educate our students. We need to make sure that we've established scope and sequences of the Kentucky academic standards at each grade level for core instruction. What is it that we expect each student to know and be able to do in each discipline throughout the school year? We are completing the first quarter of this school year. Have our students reach those points in the standards continuum in each series of disciplines to show what they know and are able to do. We need to design and implement common assessments, both formative and summative, to determine student competence as identified on the Kentucky academic standards. We have, for example, to be able to give at the quarter an assessment. Pick your favorite format of assessment. But how do third graders in X school compare to third graders in Y school compared to third graders in Z school? What we'll generally find is that in some schools, knock this standard out of the park. That same standard in another school may not have performed as well. And that same standard in another school might be somewhere in between. So the goal, we put those teachers together and say, how'd you do it? That's a great idea. I'm going to do that with my kids tomorrow to get them to where they are. And that exchange of ideas is where we build our greatest instructional capacity, because we've been able to take the best methodologies to reach students of a very diverse population, to have them show what they know are able to do from assessments that we deem to be appropriate measures of the Kentucky Academic Standards. Number 4 is just that. We're finishing the grading period here shortly. For students who have not met standards, we should be quickly shifting into what sort of corrective action we can do with those students or in those classrooms to have them get caught up. Most every school in some form or fashion has some design, whether it's a time factor, whether it's a scheduling factor, whether it's an intervention factor of adults, to be able to identify students and identify needs and work very individually, which we sometimes refer to as tier 2 or tier 3, to take that student and say, okay, let's try this a different way, and let's work it until you get it. Number 5, it's time to fill our position for the Director of Secondary Ed, which will allow the district to address and serve all students, particularly those who are low performing the above statistics. And last, by doing that, it's also been time, I think, to acquire literacy and math for grades 6 through 12, to again support this work in a sustainable way. This is heavy lifting. It's hard work. It is time and labor intensive to get ourselves to the point of knowing exactly what we're teaching, when and how, establishing the appropriate kinds of assessments to determine what students are know and able to do, and make sure we are designing the appropriate interventions for those students that may be lagging behind in a particular area, as well as advancing those students that get it quicker and faster so that they can expand beyond. The more in which we work on those ends, we establish smaller groups, the better the personalized attention, and the overall achievement, the overall satisfaction of students and families go up. It's a lot to swallow.
When you say math leads, are you meaning a leader of the math group? A person or a?
Yes, an adult, a staff member to focus on mathematics instruction 6 through 12.
If we're looking at the big picture, why are we not looking at the elementary schools in this scenario too? Because if reading's an issue at the middle school level, and I noted your slide that said it got worse from the 6th, 7th, and 8th, but I would argue that part of that curriculum in the middle school is not to teach reading. If they can't read, how are they going to test?
Okay, well, let's not argue.
I'd like to know
Yeah.
how we're not looking at, when they get to Bate,
Well,
why are we not reading on a level that we should be?
Let me show you. So this is the kind of data that we're starting to analyze currently. I'm a big fan of trend data, more than a year at a time. So what we've run for every elementary school and middle school is a sheet like this. This is an individual student profile, and I blocked out the name, which was up here. So we'll say this is me. This is Keith Lowe. And as a 3rd grader in reading, I scored highest. This was my state, this is gonna be lots of numbers and data. This was my scale score, my student growth percentile, where I finished on the Stanford 10, the Lexile measure for reading. As a 4th grader, I moved to apprentice. I'm making progress. I'm moving up. And again, you see my numbers across. And now, because of whatever reasons, we then extracted map data because we use the map a great deal. Does the map data and our K-Prep data, are they even close to each other? They're supposed to be. Let's find out if it is. So we then put the map data right next to it. My starting grid score, my ending grid score, my projected grid. So I started at 196, I ended at 204, I was projected at 204, and I made the appropriate growth for the year according to map. Which went from, and then you see the overall, this is the layman verbiage as to map data from whether your level of growth and your level of achievement. So it makes sense that as I made those gains, I in fact to go from novice to apprentice. The following year, from 4th to 5th grade, I go from apprentice to proficient. Same deal, you see my scale score. I jumped to the 96th percentile, where I started in the 40th year before. I'm making good gains, I'm doing what I need to do. We're doing good work in schools, whatever we're doing with me is working. You see my Lexile measure that I hit, and you see again that I continue to meet or exceed my projected grit on map. So the map analysis throughout was being a good predictor of the kind of work that I was doing in school. That's awesome. This is the kind of things that we want to be able to see. We want to be able to see it connect. We can do the same analysis for math. 3rd, 4th, and 5th. For me, maybe I struggle more in math. I'm novice to apprentice, and so forth. So we have run individual data sheets for every single student in this district, and now provide that to the elementary schools, as well as to the middle school. Because in the middle schools, it took a little longer. This is why analysis takes a while, because I had to figure out how I linked that sixth grader and make sure it pulls the data from elementary school at the same time. I have a very cool database that does this, but it literally pulls together 15 different sets of data so that we can then provide the analysis for folks to be able to analyze. And in every instance, we want to make sure that we're taking K-prep and we're looking at MAP, and we can add the additional assessments that teachers feel are necessary to reflect exactly that work. Because if we're only looking one step at a time, we're missing the bigger picture. So yes, the trend data is what's key.
The trend data, but also for me, what's key, and I'm no one as far as an analyzer of this information, but I am a parent and an involved parent. And what I'm wondering is just a no-brainer. To me, it's intervention. That's what we need, is more intervention, is to pull these people, like we did at the high school with the student engagement coach, to pull the people out of the class and say, before it's too late, I love the tracking system, but to have somebody who can help with the reading, if that's a problem. Or at the high school, right now our social studies is capped. We've got 30 some odd kids in this tested area because some of them left the advanced class or the AP and decided to go back to the general. That concerns me. It's hard to teach that many people. I would wonder, with resources limited, what is the best use? It's just something to ask.
Could I say something?
Yeah.
Sure. Part of what you're talking about, though, some of that work needs to be done. For example, I'll give you an example of social studies. You're talking about intervention and all that. A lot of that work should have been done in the summer, in June and July, when you're placing students. You mentioned the example of the history. I got 2 AP history classes,
Yes.
less than 14 people in each one. Then I've got 4 history classes with 30 some odd kids, over 30 in each one.
And there was a scheduling conflict that couldn't be remedied.
But that AP should have been combined way back in the
I'm
summer.
with you.
I know you are, but what I'm saying is these are the kind of things that need to take place in the summer.
But we can't-
And there just needs to be more deliberate planning, and that's something
But now
that's
we're in this
missing.
bind, right? You and I are at the high school, so we're in this bind, at least for social studies, because we are tapped out, and you saw our scores.
But bind is a good term, but we've also plugged some things in there, provided teaching assistants in each one of those classes that are overcrowded also. So I mean, it's not a total blue
And
situation.
you'll address that, because you've got a very, we will handle that. But my issue here is, generally speaking, if there are limited funds, and I'm just open, I hope this is an open discussion, because I want to know, is it more advantageous to put those funds into an intervention type position where you are in the classroom pulling the kids, or is it more advantageous? And I don't know the answer to it.
That will be an interesting discussion when we get allocations in the spring and sit down with sideways council.
Not our site-based, but I'm talking about this position for the middle curriculum.
I understand what you're saying, but on the intervention level, that has to be the school level.
Why? Student engagement coach, what? Okay, we can put the money back in applications then, even at Tolliver, if the kids have 30 in a class and we can decrease the class, is that not a better use of funding? I'm asking the question. I don't know the answer, but that's what parents have asked me.
Well, I could use another example, I hate to, everybody else can sit there and listen. We have teaching assistants that are available right now, some of them are like overseeing online journalism, which is, noble thing to do. But, I've had those folks, a freshman in an online German class, that's not going to work. It's just not. And so now I've got people dropping out of that, and there's an interventionist that I could have used someplace else in these areas to boost things. I'm just saying the way personnel have been placed, from my perspective, and Lord knows I don't have all the answers, but it's just odd to me. It's just odd.
You'll handle that and we'll get that worked out, at least in the high school.
I got to ask you.
Well, sure. What about me and my issue is reading's the problem? Again, more tolerant.
We're saying the same thing.
Let's present you.
But we don't have a whole year to wait again. I'm with you. These are a public relations nightmare, the scores, for me. And I take my responsibility. I'm on the site base. When they call up the report card, they see my name. I don't like it, but I'm accountable. I'll do what I have to do to help make it better.
Well, on our agenda tonight, we start getting into the secondary support conversation more specifically in a couple topics. That said, there's never going to be one single right answer. And likely, it's going to be a combination of these series of things. Already in the middle school, they revamped their schedule to allow for intervention time to exist. We now have more than enough data to know which kids need to be targeted tomorrow in that intervention time. And any day we don't have a kid in that intervention program, it's time that we waste. So we need to maximize the resources that we have. High school has intervention time as well. We need to maximize the time that we have. And then we need to make sure that just because time is spent, that it's strategic. That we're using, that we have an intentionality about not only the students we work with, but what we are doing with them. More of the same, or simply the same at a louder volume, isn't the answer either, which is what we often do, think that just simply drilling from their states. That's not it. This is the whole goal, honestly, when we get in our innovation conversation. The way in which we approach students and trying to find the right way to reach every individual child is where innovation really kicks in, because not everyone's going to respond to the same thing at the same time in the same way.
Dr. Wood, could you put the recommendations back on the slide?
Could I heard you say call her twice, and some about
Because
30
I
in a
had
classroom.
parents talk to me about those classes.
We had two classes that had 27. We asked the board to approve 2 instructional assistants for those positions.
And that's-
We're also looking at creative ways of hiring an intervention for in-school ESS to meet the needs. So that's where we also got scheduling that allows students to be met where they are, and whether go up or down school-wide. So we do have those things in
That's a lot of
place.
kids in a class, as you'll agree with me.
Well, we really never have 27 in a class at any given time, other than when they maybe go their enhancement classes, because we do allow them to be able to go up or down in math and read as they're needed. And like I said, we're looking at using ESS funds creatively.
I'm just saying, I appreciate that, and I'm glad about that, but I had a parent tell me that's why she moved her kids in part with the numbers at top. So I'm concerned about that when that happens. Generally, if it's Bate and it's the high school, I take every one of them personally, because I'm as invested as anybody ever will be in this district, so I'm just that concerned me.
Well, and I understand too, we don't want to see those numbers
No.
in the classroom either.
Sharon, your question?
I was just gonna say, one of the things that I've heard from people in the community is that they're concerned with the schedule at the high school, because we have kids on like a college schedule.
It's the best schedule.
And to do math, some of these kids need math every day. And so some of those parents are like, my kid doesn't even look at their paper until Friday morning before they have to turn it in, because they have it Monday through Friday. So they're really upset about the schedule. It may work for the seniors, but I don't know that it's so good for the underclassmen.
I think
I would say that's
I was gonna say that's
I
the
would
best
say
schedule.
Well,
That schedule, I only hear
those
good.
parents to come to the site-based meeting when we're talking about that, because we do that then. Regarding
And
the
here's the thing to
recommendations.
discuss. And again, this is not by the form of individualistic debate, but there's never a limitation, again, the definition of innovation, there's never a limitation of ideas. I ran a 500 student high school where half my building was on one bell schedule and half the building was on a very different bell schedule, which is a rarity in its own right, but it's possible and even probable. The goal is for us to figure out to what extent is this data we wish to change. And if it is, then that directs the conversation on how we look at the permutations and combinations of addressing those challenges. Appreciate the question.
Well, in looking at the recommendations, and I'm disappointed in my peers, my teachers, I'm speaking as teacher right now, I'm speaking as parent in a second. I'm disappointed that teachers are not attending these meetings. Because what I know is we're the ones interacting with the children every day. I can tell you what happened to the special ed writing scores. You're welcome to call me. I won't mention names, but I'll let you know what happened. And it was a direct result of an increased focus on that writing on demand. So I think that what I like about these recommendations is there's a scope. However, I'm not sure that we have all the appropriate voices at the table. And I think the teachers need to show up more, and I'm gonna let them know I think that. I know parents of kids my age generally can't come this time of the evening, but there are a lot of people who are just starting out in this district and are really excited about what this district has to offer, even though the test scores don't look great. As a parent, Nina Wren entered kindergarten at the 75th percentile. Nina Wren left kindergarten at the 41st percentile. I don't care, because Nina needs all colored crayons to draw our classroom. Excuse me, I'm getting emotional. I worry that if we focus on this and on those test scores, we miss the boat. There's a district nearby, I used to work there, that does all of these things. If we're gonna focus on these things, I think we are not being good stewards of taxpayer money. And I think that we should combine resources with that district if these are our focuses. Some of them are good, and I think in combination with the other things we're doing, some of those can be very helpful, but I do worry that if this is our new focus, we really are obsolete, because Boyle County has common assessments. Everybody takes them at the same time. They get good data. Boyle County has a great system for high test scores. I know that because I work there. It's a great district. It serves a great community. It's not where I want my child. So as we're looking at these recommendations, I hope that they're taken some. I don't like number 5. I think that we need people working directly with children, but I trust you all and Dr. Look in making those decisions. But I hope that this is not our new Danville schools focus. I hope that this is in part of the other things we're doing. Because I would hate to see us lose what is really good and special about us. So, pardon my emotionality.
That's all right. And just to kind of bring this back to kind of the context of questions, Keith, I just wanted you to clarify. I heard you say during the presentation that when you were going through those slides that were titled points of attention, and you had those for the high school and middle school, that you were working through the elementary schools as well to come up with some things like that as well. So it wasn't just single out the high school and middle school that those are the only ones there. It's just that
No.
this is a process.
This takes a lot of work.
And you're working through that, and the elementary schools will get some bullets, same as that, right?
Right, and the elementary schools have the same ability. I mean, when you're able to have this kind of level of analysis, kid by kid, full picture, it's just a way of you then able to see kids that are moved up, kids that are down, sideways. This is where the real power comes in. You're able to give to the teacher, here is every kid in your class. Here's what they did last year, here's what they did the year before. Is what you're doing now in line with what the student is able to progress and see? Is it divergent from the kinds of work that you have in place? So this is the greatest meat out of all of it. That's where we started. I wanted every school to have very good data to work with. And then it's about gleaning from that the kinds of lessons that we learn.
So, I mean, I feel like that this is going to be a conversation just for everybody that is going to continue well beyond tonight. This is just kind of our starting point for understanding this. We've got on our agenda coming up with a plan for talking with councils at each of the schools and being able to really identify areas to just kind of try to understand. I mean, the way this plays, these scores are attention grabbing. The scores are something that we need to, I think that we started down the path of even talking about innovation in the first place because our scores were not where we wanted them to be, and that was going to be a launching pad to help us be able to propel ourselves not just to incremental change and not just a little change, but to change that really would speak to students and speak to families and help kids be engaged and challenged in different ways. So we're not giving up on that. But numbers represent achievement, and that achievement is something that we can't take for granted or just hope that we're going to get without being intentional about it. So the board wants to have conversations with each school council and kind of work through this and understand what those situations are, how we can help, how we can support things that need to happen on all levels, on the level of dealing with focus groups, dealing with focus groups, meaning those groups, subgroups that are identified as focus areas, how we can support things that the school wants to see happen to meet those goals, and how we can also support schoolwork that meets the district goals that we've set as a board. So I think that, Keith's made these recommendations tonight. We'll take those, just a second, take those very seriously and into account, and this is a part of a beginning of a conversation that we all need to have to be able to feel like that we're all together in this and that we're all on board and that we're all on the same page and moving forward. So Just for the sake of tonight's conversation and kind of facilitate, I'd like to, in a second at least, just kind of start around the table and let board members kind of ask questions and talk a little bit about what we've seen and heard. Everybody's welcome to, I've noted some hands being raised, and we'll try to get around to everybody as well, because this is definitely a community effort and endeavor, and we all want it to be that and recognize that. So, is there anything, Keith, to kind of kick off that conversation that you want to say beyond what you've already done? Or so anybody, I don't want to, anybody in the group who wants to speak first, feel free. We can, and again, I don't want anybody to construe this as anything that Paige has to say or that Steve has to say or that I have to say is everything we thought of. We got these scores as we were all kind of winding down before fall break. A lot of us have been on very pleasant and intense fall breaks, but that didn't really lend themselves to sitting and going through layers of data. So this is going to take a little while to process and a little while to work through and generate questions and responses and all the rest. So this is a starting point. This conversation is a starting point of a conversation, and Keith's inbox will probably be filled up for days, weeks to come. So anyway, go ahead, Paige.
Sorry. And just to kind of piggyback on to Lonnie's point, I am the first one to tell you, we got this data, I left, it was gone all week, so I've even admitted to Lonnie, I have a lot of homework to do. There is obviously a lot to review going through this. But to me, there is a really good positive out of this. When you look at this specifically with our ACT scores, we are obviously doing something right, regardless of what our K-Prep scores are. Because when you look at where we stand with those, and I would love to see us, because the public sees the, you know, they see the K-Prep scores, they see all that. Well, that's great, and I know they are very important, but I would love to see us show people and the people living in this community that we're doing something right, obviously, because look where we rank with our ACT scores. We're obviously getting kids ready to go to college, and I know we have a big group that aren't going to go to college. You know, so I know there needs to be ways to kind of showcase these students as well, but I love at least seeing that there's some good positive points to this. It's funny because I think Kay really kind of took the words right out of my mouth when as far as elementary school. I no longer have kids in elementary school, but I've got the opportunity to go up there and mentor a fourth grader at Junior Rogers, who is probably reading on a second grade level. And of course, for me right now is why? Why is that? Where are we, what's going on with this particular student? Why is he where he is? What can we do to help him so that by the time he gets to Bate, he's not already even farther behind? So I know that, again, we've got the emphasis, like he's pointing, on Bate and the high school. But again, do we need to go back to these fundamentals of reading, math? I hope science is in there. I know science isn't tested, but I sure know that a lot of kids, when Mackenzie was building a chicken coop, got a lot out of science. And I want, you know, and I know we tend to want to focus on, you know, what's tested and where the emphasis is because of testing. But when you think of the whole picture too with innovation and pulling that in there, that's STEAM, right? Science, technology, it's all in there. So anyway, those are just some observations. I have got a lot of homework to look at these numbers. But at the end of the day, I have no doubt in our staff. I have no doubt in, you know, what we can do. But I think it's going to take a lot of efforts to figure out where that balance is. Because, you know, it's innovation, it's test scores, it's everything. But I think it's going to take a lot for us to kind of to work and figure out how do we do that? What is the right balance? Because I think, again, we are a very special school district. We have a lot to offer. I see fantastic things going on every time I'm in one of these schools. I am so surprised and so encouraged by what I see. And so, you know, I just know, I just want those of you all that are here to know that obviously we're here to do whatever we can to help. As far as the secondary position, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. And I think that's, again, something we're going to have to really work on to see. Is it somebody at central office? Is it somebody individually maybe at Bate and then somebody different at the high school? I don't know. But I do think hearing from principals, I mean, you know, teachers too, I'd love to get input. I know that kind of opens up a whole big, it's kind of hard to, to kind of bring all that into the big picture, but I would just open it up to any of you all. I would love to hear what your thoughts are, because I think that will just continue to help us as we make these decisions. So that's just where I am.
Who wants to go next?
I have such discombobulated thoughts. I don't even know, so I'm hesitating.
Okay.
And none of my
Well-
things really go together, but I'll jump in. Just
Okay, jump in.
I'm really interested in finding out more about the poverty rate over the years. I think that might explain things to people who, like Paige, grew up here and were here in Danville's heyday, and it's very hard, I think, for the people who graduated from high school here. How many years ago? And I think that might kind of explain a lot about where Danville High School was in that era and where Danville High School is now, and kind of give us a focus on our work and guiding things, even, you know, PR-wise, to kind of explain, you know, this is what we're working with, and these are our challenges, and you know, this is a focus area, and this is something that we have to really, really be conscious of and be looking at. That's one discombobulated thought. The other one is just speaking about some of the things Bridget is so passionate about. I feel the same way. When I think about the Danville schools, the things that get me most excited, and I watched my senior in high school write essays, and when Dr. Coleman was here, she always talked about giving you something in your toolbox, and I've seen him sit down and write about those things that make Danville so special to help him stand out in college applications. And I just think that's the toolbox. It's right there. He's talking about project-based learning and how he knows how to work with a group, and now how he knows how to lead and speak in front of people. And those are the things that just give me goosebumps when I think about it. That is what sets us apart for every one of our kids. Not, you know, take out any of these demographics and all these different groups that we're breaking ourselves into. That's good for any kid, no matter what you go off to do. Whether you're working, you know, at a gas station as the manager of it, you need those skills. Or if you're going off to Harvard, I wish that was in our statistics. I wanted to know where that our one Harvard kid was in your lineup. I guess that data was from before we had our Harvard student. But I think that what a lot of people misunderstand about our innovation and the work that we have to do to make these scores look better so that we all have something to be proud of is that it's a layering and it's not a separation of two things. It's not, we can only get to this innovation work and deeper learning when we've reached the jumping through the hoops of what the state wants us to do for tests. It can all be one. And maybe we just need to put more time and invest some time into getting people to see schools where this really has worked, that look a lot like Danville schools too, like these schools in New York that didn't start out, you know, in these high numbers like Boyle County has right now. They started out low and they're doing great things. So it's not, you know, it can be done, and there are places that are doing it. I think we need to look at those to make sure that we don't lose what makes us so special, and that gives me this thing to talk about elevator speech if anybody is going to move to town. Those are the things I want to talk about because they really do set us apart. Okay, third is the populated thought. The ACT focus. Like Paige was saying, I mean, unfortunately I did read all this Friday night or Thursday night, so I dreamt about it, fell asleep worrying about it all over fall break. So thank you, State of Kentucky, for giving those to us right before fall break. But, you know, you want to find the positive, and I scrolled to that immediately because I thought it's going to be good. I know it's going to be good. And so I got to it, and it was good, and it was something that, you know, did make me feel like, okay, we are on the right track with this. So as a board member, and I really think we have to look at that. It's somewhere we're already doing good work. what kind of resources and time and staff can we put into getting our kids to making sure that we get them ready for that. You know, not just because it looks good when the numbers come out, but also because it's, you know, it's the right thing to do for kids to get them ready. So, let's see, I think that's all I have right now. I'm sure I'll think of something else.
In some ways, though, I mean, I agree with you completely. As far as the innovation, like Paige was talking about, thinking out of the box learning, unconventional ways of instruction and all that kind of stuff. But then I do worry that when you look at these numbers, when you look at African Americans, special ed, the entire GAP population, in a lot of ways we are, if you base it solely on these test scores, we're missing the boat somehow. How can we connect dots when we're doing all this innovation to some of those standards? How can we marry the two together so that, everybody's progressing? Because it seems like, with a certain population, they're getting it, and they're able to move. But how do we progress maybe those on the other spectrum? What can we do from instruction to, how can we touch those kids? I think that, that the secondary education person, to me, I think we need to be able to touch kids. Is someone in an office going to be able to do that? I don't know, but I think that we have to have our hands on, to get everybody progressing. But my big thing is how do we marry the two in order to progress forward? Because I think that we are doing a lot of wonderful things in our schools, and I think that needs to continue. But how can we? This is a part of it, and this testing isn't going away. So I think, how can we build this up while still doing these? And I think that's a challenge. And I don't think any one of us have the answer. But like Paige said, talking to principals and teachers and whoever, what can we do to facilitate that? And what do teachers and administrators need?
Yeah, so I think what you had said is very interesting, is that we don't have a really good marriage between whatever you want to call it, innovation and standardized testing. And the most thing I hear about is that they feel like the district is taking 2 steps back and no steps forward. And in some ways, it's hard to defend that we haven't reached 80% of our kids. And it's always been an issue. But the issue is it's 80%. It's not just 20, it's the other. If we can't reach those kids and they're going to be part of our community, we've done our community no favors. So as far as job advancements, the bringing in industry, it's always the argument. We don't have a workforce that's educated well enough. Along with that, innovation is very vital because we can get into a lot of the engineering issues and things that we need to do. But we don't have anywhere in that proposal, anywhere, how we're going to marry all of it. Because we're not reaching enough kids. It's not anybody's particular fault. But it's time that we get a strategic plan put together, and we can't wait 2 months from now. I wholeheartedly believe that we got to follow the recommendations of our superintendent. Judy Spellacy is not the only person in elementary. There's 5 or 6 other people that work with her that are her coaches. So we have a group of 6 that deals with the elementary. We have no one to deal with the middle school or the high school. And it's not meaning we're trying to add another layer. We're trying to help. So how long are we going to go? He's been asking for that person since last November. It's been almost a year. And what do? Nothing. And I feel like we're holding this district hostage because there's just something we don't know what we want to do. We hired him for the job. And if we can't follow his recommendations, why are we here and why is he here? We can't wait, okay, I'm with you. We need to start this tomorrow.
So, Steve, I just want to respectfully disagree with your statement that anything's been held hostage. I think that we've tried to work through a process to get on the same page.
Too long.
To
A year.
If you'll let me just kind of say that I just disagree with that.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I know you would. So.
And I do. And I wanted to tell you that. And so we've worked through a process to try to get to a point where we are in agreement on kind of where we're going, what we're working on, what the goals are, what we're doing. And this is difficult work. I mean, it's been difficult work for the 7 years that I've been on the school board, and we've been fighting a lot of these same chronic kind of issues of how do we help to increase performance in a system where there are lots of challenges and where there's it's difficult work. There's not a boundary and there's not a line that separates engaged student learning and exciting learning projects and a really great, cool learning environment from learning fundamental, foundational things. Both can happen. I feel like that the question that has existed for a long time, and it still exists way too much, is the question of how do we make sure that all of our students are on a pathway and have a chance, if they just take the normal sequence of classes that's put before them, how do we make sure that they're on a pathway so that if they make passing grades, if they make good progress and all the rest, that they will be in a position to reach benchmark, to be successful, to be able to move and to have the choice. Do I want to go to college or do I not want to go to college? What comes next for me? I feel like that all that goes to things that I think are very smart on that list of recommendations. I think that we do need to refresh and make sure that our teachers understand the standards that they are supposed to be teaching, that they get that stuff, and that they know what it is, what it means, what some of the subtleties and some of the language and some of the expectations are, and that they feel confident in their ability to deliver those standards. If we have teachers who have doubts or have questions or feel like that they have deficiencies in any of that, the board needs to step up and support them in trying to figure out a way for them to feel in command and on top of those standards. They also need to understand what level of performance is expected to be able to get kids to a level of proficiency, because you can spit out and teach whatever you want to about standards just as they're worded and understand the standards yourself, but if you don't know what student work looks like that demonstrates mastery of that, that demonstrates that you're proficient in that, your own personal knowledge of it and your own personal handle on it is not really going to get accomplished what we need to get accomplished. So understanding the content of the standards for teachers is important, and understanding what strong, proficient student work looks like needs to be important too. But we shouldn't stop there. The next layer of it should be that if we have teachers who feel like I can go outside the box tomorrow and teach that better than I can if I did it on the blackboard in the traditional way, or even in the way that every other teacher in this district is doing it. If somebody says, I can do this with, it's like name that tune. If somebody can do this in different notes than somebody else, let's let them do it. Let's support them in doing it. Let's let them say, I can be ambitious and create a learning experience like no other, and cover these standards and get kids to that level of performance. But in the end, we have to have a sequence of classes and things that happen in the classroom and things that happen every day that if the kids do the work that's asked of them, they will be in a position to be successful. Successful not meaning that they get to go to the next grade the next year. Successful meaning they're not going to be novice. They're probably not going to be apprentice. If they are apprentice, they're moving towards proficient, but they're going to be proficient. They're going to be, by anybody's definition, K-preps, the states, and employers, anybody's. That's a kid that knows what they're talking about. That's a solid kid. But a multiple choice test is not the only way to demonstrate that you're there. There are other ways to show, and we should recognize and honor those ways too, and encourage those ways. So that's where innovation, I feel like, comes in. How do we get some of this stuff across how are kids allowed to show what they know and do about stuff that's about the meat of learning, about the meat of education, about those foundational skills, and then let kids move beyond that when they're ready. But then there's another question that comes after that. How do we tell parents and how do we tell families what all that stuff is? What your kids needs to be doing, what the path to proficiency is. I mean, the sheet that was up there at the end of a kid's performance on math and on A-Prep and on all the rest, the two things that stand out to me about that, number one, it really has limited connection, it could have limited connection of what happens in classroom work and classroom grades. So we get to these kinds of conversations, and we all have kids or no kids or have and no kids who go through day after day, week after week of classes. They make reasonable grades, they do their homework, they do extra credit if they want to raise their grade a little bit, they do all this sort of stuff, but you kind of wonder as it's all going along, is what they're doing really at a level that's going to put them in a place where they can succeed? And so we've got to make that clear to parents and to families and to kids too, what they need to do so that they can be in that category of success. In second grade, in fourth grade, in eighth grade, in 11th grade, wherever. And not just that we've got kids who are doing time and showing up and doing the work they're asked to do and all the rest, but maybe in the end, when we get test scores in October or when we see MAC results later, it doesn't all add up, it doesn't all figure. Because we don't have nearly the percentage, if we were to look at, maybe if we were to look at what percent of our elementary school kids end up on the honor roll in 4th and 5th grade, the numbers might look a little bit like kind of how our proficient and distinguished numbers break down. I don't know. But that is the message that kids are getting day in and day out in class. How am I doing? You're doing good. You're making A's and B's. Well, are our A's and B's, does that translate to something that really has meaning, that a realtor, that an employer, that an educator, that a school board member, that a community member who takes their Monday night to come to a meeting is going to bank on? Maybe, maybe not, but we shouldn't be in that position, and I think that every school system in America is in that position. But I'd like for us to be one of the first to get out of it and make it so that teachers have command of what they're teaching, they understand the performance level that needs to happen, we're able to communicate to families what we expect kids to do, and even kids who aren't on an honors track or an accelerated track or any other track. If you're just coming to school and you're taking a social studies class, that should be leading you towards success in social studies. If you're making reasonable grades, making reasonable effort, doing your part. And we've got to figure out how to get closer to that.
Do you feel like teachers right now know the standards?
Well, I guess the answer, I don't know. I mean, I think that they probably do. I think that they probably do. But I'm really not in a position, I don't know the standards, so I don't know how to know whether teachers know the standards. So I know there's a lot of standards. I know that, I know that there are a lot of standards that our tests can't even test.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm going to kind of jump in and answer that question. So you asked, do teachers know the standards? I don't know if this would be applicable from a director of elementary person to apply it to director of secondary education, but I know that at the elementary level, the teachers of my school are hungry to be the best teachers that they can be. And what Judy provides for them is a guidance. And she's also, while she's not necessarily working with kids on a daily basis, the work that she does impacts hundreds of kids on a daily basis. So to answer your question, I think that somebody in the position of a secondary director of education could help feed that fire for teachers to make sure that they're not only excited about what they're doing, but also efficient at what they're doing and putting their work where it needs to be. Because, the work of a teacher is very difficult just on a daily basis. So having that extra guidance, I think, is needed.
Thank you. I've got a couple more things. One is that I feel like that, so we saw the scores, we've seen the results, but part of what's happened this year is that the science standards are being rewritten. I feel like that in everything that I've heard, it seems like that those science standards are being rewritten in such a way that feeds very nicely into a project-based, kind of right up our alley of kind of innovation and performance assessment kind of work. So I would suggest that to the extent that we can see possible, that we make our science people really be the trailblazers and the people who know those science standards from the first day that they're tested, inside and out, know that level of performance, so that once we get back on the chart and have science scores, that those things will be as strong as possible. I mean, if we are at this place where we need to kind of walk teachers through standards and walk teachers through that sort of thing, some of that's just because teachers aren't as familiar as they should have been from the get-go with a lot of these new state Kentucky academic standards. So we have the opportunity in science to take that, run with it, and take full advantage of the latitude that it gives for understanding science as a process, understanding science as a way of inquiring into what's going on and how things work and all of this. So I think that there's an opportunity in science to really play into where we've been going as a district anyway. And the people at KDE have told us that they really would like for the science assessment to be something that kind of goes in a little bit of a different direction, and that what we've been doing with performance assessment at Bate is something that they feel like they can learn from and can work with. So that's still very relevant and very useful for us. The next step for the state is to adopt new social studies standards. And those standards, as people talk about them, are very different from, it's not going to change our situation on high school social studies, because that's probably going to continue to be a multiple choice, content heavy in the course test. But for social studies everywhere else, social studies is going to come much more about experiencing kind of the way people have made decisions and processed things and all the rest, and a lot less about knowing the names of Columbus's ships, or what year he landed in America, or whether he landed in America at all. It's going to be much more about how people use information. So that gives us an opportunity with social studies teachers too to try to get out ahead of where those standards are going at this very moment. I just think that we cannot back away from our support for engaging student work, exciting learning experiences that when people see those, parents think, I wish they did that when I was in school. When people in the community see it, they think, what a cool school to get to go to. And those don't have to happen in every class every day. But we do need some really standout examples of those things, and we need to continue to encourage that at the middle school and high school where it's been most prevalent, and where we have people who are ready to move forward with it to the fullest extent possible, and really support people to do that kind of work and to build capacity for that. Innovation does not equal fluff. Innovation does not equal not being successful in K-12. It's not an either-or situation, at least in my head. And I think there are lots of schools that do that. The last thing I have is just a question, which is, I guess, Keith, I'll let you answer it, which is just how do we track right now? Like when we had the conversation when we were working on the agenda, you were just mentioning that some of these scores didn't come as a huge surprise, because I know that the board doesn't talk as much about some of those along the way, math results and some of that other sort of stuff. But how can we do a better job as a board and as a group that gives support to our schools to kind of know what the temperature is as we're moving forward, and understand kind of what maybe some of you guys understand already about whether things are moving so that it doesn't just end up being this is an October conversation every year, but not something that stays at the forefront.
This is where, as we would map standards, this is where formative and summative assessments come in. That's what you do, is you do those checks to see where kids are and how they're progressing. And you do it on a regular basis. And to say the word assessment doesn't mean that it is always a bubble sheet that is scanned in. Assessment is assessment. Some is traditional, some is performance-based, some is otherwise. But you've got to track regularly. Otherwise, you're never using the dipstick, you're never taking the thermometer out and determining that. And it has to then be tied back to standards and a way of understanding the right or a sequence of progression to see how that works. And if you teach it one way and I teach it some way differently, we need to learn and see what kind of impact we have. To then be able to know along the way who's getting it, who's not, and how we then intervene to catch folks up. Elementaries have figured this out a little earlier because the sense of intervention has always been more prevalent in an elementary environment because the teachers had to own those kids all day long. As we start to move to positions that are more discipline specific, sometimes it's easier to say that's not my territory. Like the hardest thing to do sometimes is convention in middle school that everybody's a reading teacher. It's even harder at the high school. But it's part of everybody's work to decipher and decode text and to know that that has to be common skills that we make sure are part of every kind of assessment that we do.
But I think, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
The question, what I was wanting to ask was a little bit different than that, which is just, how do you guys use and how do our schools use the things that we already are getting, MAP scores, other kinds of tests that kids get in different subjects and different grades and all the rest to kind of have a moving picture through the year of where we're going to be once scores like these come in, so that it's not just an October news event?
Well, this year's a little trickier because no longer, we usually would take Explore in the fall, right? We usually take Play in the fall. They don't exist here. So we don't have anything on that tier until spring. K-Prep exams aren't until spring.
But we've given MAP already.
That's right. So to explain from the specific K-Prep parts, there's even less we have this year than we've had in years past. MAP data from spring last year was used in some places very intentionally to go ahead and set up our intervention groups for August. We gave it at the end of the year. We know where the kids are from there. Most kids at best stay where they're at, if not decline a little bit, and we can tag from there. You then take the November or October MAP data and you verify. Did we put the kids in the right groups? Are we giving the right kind of attention? And does teacher intuition or other evidence in the classroom explain why this student should be receiving more or this student should be receiving less? Some schools will then administer a winter check, which generally has been our least reliable MAP assessment. There's a level of exhaustion, there's a level of weather and days off and on, and therefore it's not one that we have put the greatest pressure into. And eventually you get tired of it. So we really have said in schools at minimum, we want fall and we want spring because those are two pieces that need to connect. Meanwhile, we'll be taking this data to try and create a picture of longitudinal patterns for folks to analyze. Simply learning to ask those questions and then to link it to standards changes the conversations in PLCs that meet weekly around those kind of conversations, around individual kids and who's moving which direction. Investing in EVOS, we don't know what that's going to give us. It should give us a new set of information to also process with this without having to provide additional assessment. But when that comes back, it gives us yet another chance to revisit these same conversations and get into this and figure out where our kids are at, and then verify that against classroom experience, teacher observation, parent feedback, and student performance.
Can I jump in here for a minute with how the schools are looking at data?
Right.
Because I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think innovation and standards do have to fit together some way. And I'm just, speaking from the elementary point of view, the coaches and the principals on a weekly basis during their PLCs look at the data, look at, scores, look at student work, so it is ongoing. I don't know how that would relate back to the board, because you don't want to look at student work every month as detailed as they do, but they do take the pulse. I think the elementaries are looking at the standards in more detail, getting to know them because of the PLCs, and the coaches have a lot to do with that. And of course, I lost my train of thought on that. Oh, I know. But as I'm having my grade level meetings across the district, more and more teachers at each of the grade levels have said to me, the weekly PBLs that I send out and say, take a chunk and do whatever, and I think you all get them too. A lot of them have said, okay, now that I have started concentrating on the standards more, I've started looking at those PBLs and taking small things, but don't send anybody to my school to see me because I want to experiment with them. So innovation's there. They're trying to get their feet wet at that point as they're becoming familiar with the standards. So I think that work is kind of beginning to have a marriage at the elementary school. but it has a lot to do with the coaches monitoring that, because the teachers, you know, they have, as Leo said, they have a lot on their plates on a daily, weekly basis. So the coaches have taken over the standards and trying to sort things out and make it easier for the teachers on the curriculum maps and the pacing guides and all of that.
Right.
So you know, in looking at that and looking at the data constantly, you know, with weekly assessments, unit assessments, quarterly assessments, that helps give them the pulse and see where students go. You know, I don't know what you would want as, you know, a board to hear from the principals, hear from the coaches, you know, that type of thing to keep you all abreast, you know, throughout the year before that big K-Prep data comes in.
Well, I think that, like, for example, right now, knowing that nearly all of our schools and in a lot of areas, we took steps backwards. I guess that was something that had been discussed and that people in the schools knew was probably going to happen based on looking at results. Now, I don't know how far back, but it's something that hits the news and we find out in October as a board. And so now I think that we feel like that we need to kind of swing in this gear of when we talk to councils, when we do other things, of really being able to kind of respond to something like that. But I mean, it puts things in a different light. I know as so I just wonder how we can kind of keep a better handle on kind of where we feel like, where people feel like with professional judgment, with data that we have or whatever, how things are moving so that we kind of feel like that we know what's happening within our own district without it just being kind of a wake-up call that comes in October every year from the state, so that we know, are we on an upswing, or are we on a downswing? And I understand there's lots of subjects, lots of subgroups, lots of all kinds of moving pieces at all times. But I just want to feel a little bit more in tune with that. But I don't want to be coming to PLC meetings on a monthly basis or having reports of those here. So, you know, we've got to figure out kind of how to dip into that in the right way.
Could I interject something? Sure. Of course, you know, obviously interim coming back 2 months in. My observations initially at the high school is the PLC structure had pretty well fallen by the wayside, along with using standards as a basis of education, especially those where the EOC classes were. I mean, it's pretty well non-existent coming back in. Now we're in the process of putting all that back in, but it just kind of fell by the wayside for whatever reason. All right. So we have to have methods, like you said, in putting things where we're keeping up with where kids are. And at the high school is always traditionally been weak at that, but they've lost quite a bit there in staying on top of that. I mean, there were structures that I see in other schools to help with that coming into Danville High School are just non-existent, and we've got to get those in so we can track where students are for intervention, for enrichment. And I'll give you an example. You know, the deal about innovation and standardized testing, they can mix. I do an instructional overview with my kids, with the teachers, and I say, what's your standard that you're trying to teach? How many get it? I don't care what you do. I don't care how you teach. It doesn't matter to me. You know, do whatever you want as long as the kids are functioning. And I think, you know, that's a structure where teachers are sometimes hesitant because, you know, teachers tend to be very compliant people. They want you to tell them how you want to teach it, what you want them to do. And there's a hesitancy there. At least that's what I've seen at the high school, to jump out a little further and go outside the box, as you said a while ago. And, you know, that's something that has to be eliminated, them made more comfortable. You know, when they see these scores come out, they're embarrassed by them. And I can see why.
Well, our scores have been bad every year for a long time. So
exactly. But I'm also going to say this, you know, in my experience in other school districts,
right,
we've taken districts that were way below Danville,
right, and
turned them around,
right,
by putting structures in place to keep up with kids.
Right.
And that's the thing.
Right. And I hope that we can do that while also building the culture of ownership where people do have that freedom that you're talking about. This is the standard, this is the level of performance we want to get to. get there in the most, in the strongest way possible. And if that's something that is non-traditional or is project-based or is whatever, let us help you figure out a way to be strong at doing that. Because in the end, this is not about numbers. In the end, it's not about structures and teachers and all that. In the end, it's about whether or not kids are excited to come to school and want to keep learning new stuff even after they leave us. And so we've got to also be conscious of tending that fire and not just in the pursuit of numbers and in the pursuit of everything else. And I don't think this is what you were trying to say. I'm just on a different soapbox now. Of making sure that we are making kids excited about school, making kids excited about learning, and making them feel like that they are engaged in what they're doing, and not just what happens in our schools too much and what happens in a lot of other schools, playing a game that adults kind of set up to reach certain number targets so that the school looks like it is hugely successful. When we all know that in Kentucky, every school needs to get way better, even if you feel like that you're resting on your laurels. So, anyway, that's the end of my discombobulated thoughts. Does anybody who's sitting at the table want to say anything else?
The only response I can have to that is we always talk about the enthusiasm of our kids. What about the enthusiasm of our staff?
And our taxpayers.
Sure. I mean, you come to work and your scores are so bad that it's even hard to take ownership. And we need to take ownership.
I think that's what we're doing.
And I think that we tend to forget that we have a staff of 250 people that take great pride in our school system. We haven't offered much to them to keep that pride.
Okay.
So we have a lot of work to do. And we have to come up with the marriage.
Well, I hope that by me saying that we should care about the excitement and the engagement of students doesn't mean that I'm saying that I'm not caring about the adults who work in the system or the people in the community. Obviously, I feel like that we've been paying serious attention to both groups for a long time. So is there anybody beyond the table who would like to say anything? Patsy, I know you had your hand raised as well.
I did, and each of you have said a lot of things that I can certainly agree with. I agree a lot with Steve that there's a limit to how much longer it can just be talked about. There needs to be some action taken. The natives are getting restless. I mean, my peer group who support the schools with their tax dollars are pretty unhappy with the way things are going. I think there ought to be a way you can be innovative and still look good on the test scores. I think Danville's always been an innovative school district. Before somebody came in and called it quote unquote innovative, this district was always innovative and had innovative teachers and did things and were the shining star of the whole central Kentucky area. And I just don't see why we can't do that again. I really don't. I know that we've got dedicated principals and dedicated staff and the teachers. All of the pieces are in place to do that. I think it's just got to be a very concerted effort and kind of one of the, I wish I had made notes, but one of the slides talked about getting back to aligning the curriculum. I remember spending a whole lot of money one summer paying for teachers to come in. Am I right, Ms. Belsey? We did that. We did that years ago. Where did it go? Where's that gone? I mean, where are all the good things that we used to do that made our test scores good while in my mind, we were awfully innovative? Where's it all gone? And I want it back again, and I don't think there's a whole lot of time to be spent talking about it. I understand you all just got the results, and it's going to take you a while to process that, and I can understand that, but I just really feel like there's a big time bomb ticking and something needs to happen quickly.
Well, I think that we all agree with that. So nobody here said we're not going to make a decision about anything or put things off for 2 months. Steve mentioned 2 months. Nobody has said that. We're all engaged in a conversation, asking everybody in the room to participate, staying here, not looking at our watches, because this is a crucial thing and we all want to be involved and we all care about the very same things here. It's not a, and this is, I mean, so, you know, we feel impatient too. Most of us are on the school board because we were impatient.
One other thing, I heard Dr. Look say that he ran a school that had two different bell schedules. And I'm like Sharon, I've heard a lot about the high school schedule. And the high school schedule obviously works for a good segment of the high school students. But I think we also have a segment of our students who need to be in class 5 days a week and getting everything of the basics that they can get. And maybe that's an answer. It was redoing the schedule so that you've got one group of kids that can do the Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and do that part of it, and another group of kids that needs more intentional intervention doing 5 days a week and being in class longer.
Well, and we have a council at the high school that has paid very close attention to that, monitors it very closely, takes into account the views of teachers and parents and students, and will make those decisions. And, you know, I think there are a lot of people who sing the praises of it. I know that everything we do has room for improvement, room for tweaking, room for even thinking about throwing it out and starting over. So we just have to, you know, we have to appreciate the work that people are doing very seriously, trying to do the right thing and not feel like that just because it's not 100% successful that, you know, that they messed up. So, but I know that the council at the high school is paying attention to the schedule every year, thinking about what to do about it and all that sort of stuff, and we'll continue to. So, and the board, in a minute, we'll talk about how we're going to meet with councils to have conversations to see how we can support that and be a part of making that as good as it can be, which is why we're all here. Anybody else?
One more.
Mr. Smith.
I want to address a couple of members of the board who are products of the Danville system. Be very careful of revisionist history. Because when you were in school, you may have thought that everything was perfect, but it's never been. And we've always had these issues, and we've always fought to try to overcome.
Oh, I have no.
You know, and I know.
Don't tell them anything I don't know. Trust
Yeah.
me, I grew up with a mom that was a school teacher in the
Yeah.
system for 27
But as I
years.
said, we just, you know, these are not new problems.
Oh, sure they're not.
And
Sure they're
we're
not.
going to continue to work on them, and things are going to go wrong, things are going to go right. But, you know, now, the ability to overlook any group of students is gone. I mean, you can't leave anybody out. You have to have interventions, performance by every subgroup. And that's one thing that has to be intentionally planned for, and there's some areas that slipped just a little bit.
Sure.
It's either slipped or been forever non-existent.
Sure. And I don't think, I mean, I hope there's nothing that I would ever say that makes me think
No, I'm
that
just
anything
throwing
that's
it
going on now, because trust me, we lived in North Carolina, in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Park school districts. I didn't want to stay there with my kids. There was a reason why we moved back to Danville, and specifically Danville school districts, because I am a product of the school district, but I also have seen changes in the 25 plus years since I graduated and understand that completely. So that's why I'm here on this board.
Yeah, and you know, just to, I mean, all of us care about all the subgroups. All of us care about every kid, really. And I think that all of us are here not for our kids, but because we want to make, I mean, Steve, you talked about the people who are going to stay here and be in this community. You know, I mean, I didn't stay in my community, but I go back and I spend a lot of time with the people who did, and I know, I understand that completely, that you know, we're not here to, my kid's going to be fine. I didn't have to run for school board to take care of my kid. I could have stayed home and done that. I could have stayed home tonight and done that. I'm here because this, I feel like being a member of a school board and being a part of this operation is the best possible way to ensure the best possible future for this community. And that may, I hope that that will last long past when I'm here. So we do want to work and make sure that we're doing the right things for all kids, but Mr. Smith, you're correct too. I mean, I've been on the board going on, I mean, I'm finishing my 7th year on the board, and these test scores don't look that different from what I saw the first night I came. You know, we've been battling this problem and trying to find ways to solve it and trying to find ways to fix it, and we've talked about aligning to standards. We've talked about the standards were different then. I mean, some of this is a game that we have to deal with the state, where things get written, rewritten, figured, refigured, reweighed, resliced, rediced you know, and who knows what the federal government will do to us too. All the while for 7 years, cutting money, cutting resources, cutting anything that would help us be able to go above and beyond skin and bones to do all this stuff. So, you know.
But at the same time, other schools have accomplished it.
Other schools have accomplished it. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying we've got to do it. I'm just saying that I don't want to give up the opportunity for kids to feel excited about what they're learning and for it to be as creative and helpful to them as possible. And that we also think about these things that aren't on that board that have to do with how kids can show what they know, how they can stand up in front of people, how they can, like was said before, work in teams and do everything. We got to do all that. That should be on this list too. And if that was on this list, then Dan would be at the top of that list. You know, it's just that's not on the state's list yet, but maybe someday, because employers and others are saying that that's what the kids need, those skills too. So we really are. I mean, when we were sitting before the state board, one of the state board members said, he was talking about a school district that's been put under state management, and he was saying your problems are foundational, not aspirational. And we've got some foundational problems that we need to address, but we also are a school district that has some aspirations too, for what we want to do beyond just that bottom line and just beyond that basics. And we can't give up on that either. So, anybody else in the wider circle? Anybody else who's out on the street can hear me now? Your chance to speak. So, anybody else want to add to the conversation tonight? I guess we've only made it as far in the agenda as item 8, K-Prep data review. So, if we want to go to number 9, innovation action planning. Keith, you want to talk about that?
Sure. In a conversation with one, you presented me a desire to create action plan. Yeah, once you go through.
Okay. So let me, this is French stuff. So based on conversations that we had had beginning at our retreat and then at the work session that was at Hogsett, which was our last work session, based on the PowerPoint that Keith had produced and that we voted on and sent to the state, and then their request for something that was in a little bit different format to kind of explain what we're trying to do. Keith and I talked about that it would be helpful. I said that it would be, that my sense from board members was that it would be helpful to us if there was a way to turn that into something that looked like an action plan, a work plan, I don't know what you call it, but just something that kind of defines the areas where we're trying to do things under this plan, and that just is able to delineate kind of what chunk of that might get addressed and tackled and discussed or worked on in this, I mean, just to kind of present an outline. Maybe what part of it we're doing this fall, what part will happen in the spring, where we hope to be with it going into next school year, just so that we have common expectations and a common language and a common way to look at that. So Keith had mentioned that that would be something that the innovation leadership team would tackle and look at and be able to help provide for us. So that's in the works, right? And that group, if we're done by 9 o'clock in the morning, that group is meeting in the morning at 9, right?
Yes.
I think we will be. I think we'll be finished by then. So that's in the works, and that will be something that will be kind of widely available as soon as possible. Does that cover that one? And I'm glad to send it. I shared with Keith just some, kind of based on reading the memo and all the rest. But I think that the group is going to look at it and come up with chunks and headings and all that sort of stuff. So we'll just wait for that iteration of it.
The one thing that comes through this, and this is, I think, what also has a bigger conversation. From a leadership standpoint, we have to be very careful about what comes at teachers with what volume. Everything can't come in exactly the same volume, because then it gets lost as noise. So as we talk about how we want to address standards, how we want to address issues of performance, how we want to address issues of innovation, there will need to be some ongoing conversation as to what's the volume on each one of these items, and essentially what level of comfort or level of discomfort we are able to exist with to make sure that teachers understand what their priorities are, in order to know that if choosing between A and B, they have enough information to know what's the right option for them and their students.
Is that something that, I mean, are you saying we need to discuss that now, or is that something that we will be working on as we work through?
Well, it's good. There's going to be a couple pieces of this that all come together at the same time. An action plan specific to innovation will also be present in the process, at the same time as schools developing CSIPs that will be specifically addressing how we get to K-prep results. That's what's required by Senate Bill 1. So it's all going to mesh from a timing standpoint together. And the innovation leadership team is going to have to talk about how we get teachers in the best position to make the best decisions as to what they put in paper and what they put to print. To know that this is what I'm being accountable for. This is what my growth goals will be set up to be. This is how I'm going to be evaluated. And this is what it means for me and my students and my school moving forward. So those two things are going to intertwine a great bit. And we're going to need to be very clear with folks in the district at the school level how those volumes are supposed to be taped.
So, again,
Sorry.
what are there questions that need to be answered about that tonight?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Not tonight, so we'll be talking about that very soon. The next item on the agenda has to do with something.
Wait, I'd like to just.
No, where's the camera? The next item on the agenda has to do with the secondary education support. That was mentioned in Keith's data presentation. Is there more that you want to say about that?
No.
You know, I'll jump in and just say that, I mean, Keith and I had this conversation. When we hired Keith, and that was, Kate and myself were present at those discussions and not the other board members. You know, we felt like at the time that there probably was a need in the central office to have more capacity to be able to help move. You know, I don't want anybody, when I say the word innovation, to think that I mean fluff, that I mean circus acts, that I mean something else that's not going to help us teach kids math, science, reading, all those things that are packed into standards. What I mean by innovation is moving this district forward in a way that means that we are going above and beyond those kind of basic levels of performance and helping ensure those, but also making sure that the learning that happens here is something that's kind of irresistible to people and something that people can feel, the people in the school system and the community and the kids who do it can feel really proud about and feel a little bit envious of from outside. So we had talked about that. We, I don't want to get into kind of the sequence of events and how this went down, but I've tried to work in a collaborative way with Keith on dealing with these issues since I became board chair and making sure that we're all on the same page and that we're all working towards something that we agree on and that is kind of where we're going. I had said, and the board, I had board members say to me back in June that it made sense to hold off until we were able to come up with a plan that met the state's corrective action requirements, that we all agreed on that. That happened at the end of August. We heard back from the state. They gave us clearance on that, more or less, I guess, recently. And with this step of moving toward a work plan that sets all this stuff out, I think that now makes sense as a time to consider this request for this position and to figure out, you know, where we go with it. I think that the questions about how we help in our schools and how we provide resources and support are things that are important, but I think that they're things that also go beyond just this position. And I agree with Steve that it's important to take seriously and to consider with all importance the recommendation of the superintendent office. So I think that because I don't want us to drag our feet on this, and because I know, Keith, that you feel like that this is a crucial thing and an important thing, would it be helpful now to hear some feedback from the board just about, I mean, we got this to a point in June where you had presented kind of a beginning, kind of first draft of a job description. Do you need to hear back from us before you can present something else that we can actually talk about and act on or deal with, or what do we need to do tonight?
Any of the above on how to move this forward. In January, I presented detailed ones, and that wasn't something that the board was that felt comfortable about. So I've been kind of trying to hit the sweet spot as far as what is the level of detailed information the board would like to be able to have a serious consideration. So I need to know what that is. The ones you all got in June was a mirror image of the director of elementary ed, because that was already on the books, and if too much information on one end was problematic and too little, help me figure out what it is that you would like to hear or see to be able to make a decision as to whether or not you agree this would be useful to the district.
See, on my view on that is, first of all, if the superintendent presents a position with a written guideline, that's his prerogative. We do not determine personnel. We do not determine what the personnel does. The only person this board hires is the superintendent. I think we have to trust this man for what he needs. And getting into the semantics and what the job's going to do and how they're going to do it, where they're going to be located, that's not our job.
Steve?
That's not our job.
It's not our job, but you're taking this to a little bit of an extreme level, and just because there's an audience here and because...
No, that's not...
I'm not saying you're doing it because of that reason. I'm just saying that I want to explain something because of all the people that are listening to this. We've not talked about where this job is located or any of those kinds of, that level of detail. And it is completely within the board's purview to approve new positions. That's something that we're supposed to do and think about how resources are used and the effect that that's going to have in the school district. That's been happening for years and years, that we create new positions and we approve positions and we sometimes delete positions, and the board does that. The board has to do it. The superintendent can't do it. The superintendent can make a recommendation, but the board has to act on that. So we're...
But the difference is, Lonnie, I was on the board for 8 years.
Right.
We had the superintendent come to us with job positions that needed to be filled. And in 8 years, we never asked that superintendent what that job description was. Never. And I don't know why we're starting now.
Well, I've been on the board for 7 years, that you were on the board for 8 years, and we have asked questions like that, and I think that they're perfectly appropriate. We're not trying to meddle in this. I think that so I appreciate your point of view on this and all the rest, but I think that we are not stepping outside of our bounds by having this conversation.
I think we approve a position the superintendent needs for the advantage of all the kids in this school district, and that's what we need to do.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Make this worse, really.
This is not a vote on whether or not we approve the position.
No,
This
it's
is
not.
about
I think
guidance for-
this is just questions I have, because we have gotten feedback from those at the school level saying that they don't know that this is necessarily what will help them. So is it the right thing to do to ask the principals of Bate and the high school, is one person that Keith is wanting to hire, is that, maybe that's not the right way to go about it? I don't know, because I just feel like we're getting too many directions on what the schools want maybe versus, and I don't know what the right
I think
answer is.
I think the right answer to your question is that what we need to do is give Keith our guidance tonight on, in putting together a job description for this request. What guidance do we have on what we feel like is important that that position do? For his information, Keith can request the position. You can vote how you want to vote on it, based on whatever beliefs or information or factors, are at your disposal. But I don't think that it's right to either put Keith in the position of saying, go talk to this person or this person, but not this person or this person, or to put people on the spot tonight to say, we want this or don't want this. So I think that right now, the question really is, are there things about this secondary education support position that Keith feels like is something he obviously is going to recommend and is important for the districts that we want to offer as input at this point to say needs to be something that is considered as part of that position. Or just, I mean, so if anybody has anything they want to say, you can say it tonight, you can pass the information to Keith. But I think that there's going to be a request for the position. I think that there's going to be a job description, and then we're going to have to vote on it. And the input that I gave Keith when he and I met and we talked about this was just that I feel like that somewhere in some job description, and maybe what needs to happen, he felt like it was important for this position to have a job description that was in some balance and parallel with the job description we already have for an elementary supervisor. I just think that, to me, it would make sense if in some job description there's some weight given to the things that are part of this corrective action plan, that are part of this innovation action plan, whatever we're going to call it, that have to do with, I mean, now that we've gone through this process of coming up with this plan, submitting it to the state, talking about it, there are things that are on our radar now that are a little bit different than were on our radar before it, that have to do with how we measure growth, how we track readiness, how we document mastery, how we build capacity for project-based learning and other kinds of learning environments, and how we focus on performance assessment and PBAT type of things. So I just, what I told Keith that day when he said, that he felt like it was important for those things to be similar. So I just, maybe what we need to do is kind of reopen the other job description so that stuff's at least somewhere. So it's indicated and we can point to it and say that we really are trying to do this and these people have a role in that. So that's my input, not anything with people. I think that we do have to take seriously the recommendations of the superintendent and what needs to happen to move us forward. And so,
I have a question.
Yes.
When in the at the elementary level, we were talking about all that information is being pushed out to those coaches. In this role, where is that information going to be pushed to? I mean, are there, those mirror image coaches at the middle school and high school level that information is going to trickle down? Because,
Currently, there isn't. So I would have to work that individual through department chairs, PLCs, via the principal to be of critical support. Depending upon how we're able to agree on a job description, then can allow me to use federal grant funds to then create the math and literacy leads, let's say, to then be able to have those same source, proxy resources in same ways. I would love to have a resource person in every discipline. That's not going to be affordable if we have to pick a place to start. This is it. Ideally, depending upon the funds that are available, that also allows me to figure out the kinds of skills that I can recruit. So maybe I can get someone that is good with 2 disciplines or 4 disciplines, but the primary focus is that we've got to move math, we've got to move reading. And it's going to be not just one individual to be able to make all of that happen. We've got 1,000 kids and 2 schools to be able to function with.
and at this point, we've already, in the draft budget, tentative budget, whatever budgets we've done, we have included funding already for what could be those federal, we set aside that $40,000, we set aside some amount of money from the federal funds for that coaching type role, right?
No, we have teacher quality money that's available to spend in a series of ways, but no, the board did not act on those federal dollars to which I refer.
Okay. Well, there was some amount of money that we had put aside in those budgets that was, I can talk to Joy about that, make sure I understand that correctly.
Okay.
Anyway, so those are positions that there is funding, outside of the budget for there to be some leeway in how those are set up.
Well, yes, there's funding for this position too that was also established.
Well, and that's, so Joy has said that we could add that in and it would work within the budget, but we've not put that in. We haven't voted to make that part of the budget yet.
No, that's correct.
So we would do that at some point too. But Joy has advised us that the $80,000 budgeted for that position is something that we could do.
Yeah. The key though for me is trying to figure out how the puzzles fit together
depending upon the extent to which this position is defined, then domino effects is the kinds of skills that I need in the other positions to fill in. This is the linchpin spot to know up or down, yes or no, is going to happen, is not going to happen. So I can then figure out how to use the remaining resources to be able to target the teachers and the students that need that attention the most. That's been the sequence.
What does the leadership of the high school and the middle school, what do they think? Because this is, just such a big chunk of money. Do they think this is the best use of funds to help meet the needs and get these students where they need to be? And, just talking about all these students who need to reach the standards and support for that.
I have not been actively campaigning because I didn't feel like that was fair to you guys. Y'all made it clear that this really wasn't to be discussed, so if I was doing that, otherwise I would feel like you would be manipulated behind your back. So there's it's amazing the number of people that are weighing in on this conversation that I haven't raised it with, to be able to discuss the full details as to what this would do or wouldn't do, what the impact would be or wouldn't be. In general, yes, I think that you could ask Gwen and Beth, and they would say that they would need additional support at the middle and high. To what extent that should be specified to look in this way or that way is a longer conversation to be had.
Well, as this has become kind of public and even referenced in the newspaper, I've gotten a lot of feedback that I didn't seek out either. This just come to me. And so as much as Steve wants us to act on this and it's something that you want, I can't get those voices out of my head. And it's not positive. So that's why I asked the question. I think that we do need to know that the leadership of the middle school and high school, that they feel like this, this amount of funding is really going to get us where we all need to be, and that it's not going to be resisted. If there's another kind of level of central office personnel, is that what is needed? Is that what people want, or is it just going to be somebody coming in that people think, well, that isn't at all what I wanted. That isn't at all what we need to be in middle school or at Danville High School. So, I appreciate that you aren't going out kind of campaigning for this position, and that would be kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, I think we kind of need to know, is this the support that the leadership of the middle school and the high school need to get us where we need, to move forward? Or would that money be better used splitting it in half and you put, somebody specifically resourced at the middle school and at the high school? So, I don't know how we get that answer, but like I said, I have these voices in my head too, and I don't really know how to get to a point where I can represent the people who sought me out and explain why they don't feel like it's necessary, and would actually be kind of upset if another level of kind of what they call bureaucracy were placed in the middle of the work that they're trying to do. I think, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of why I asked the question is, who are going to be the feet on the ground, that if this person is in place that are receiving all these, resources, who are going to be the people who are receiving that and actually doing it?
And is it wanted? And then will they take that and do good with it, So.
Thank you for saying that, Kate. I think that's what I was trying to get to earlier.
I'm really trying hard not to step on anybody's toes, and I don't want to seem like I'm meddling too much in your vision for how to move us forward. But, since we are at this point and these voices have been heard, I feel like it's important just to throw it out there and before we approve this and then it doesn't turn out to be what we want, and, we've wasted a lot of money, so.
I'm not quite sure how to respond.
You don't have to. I'm just, it's not a response. I think we're all just discussing it, and I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think at this point that, it was important to have a conversation for you to be able to kind of get the sense of the group and some of that sort of stuff. Us continue to kind of work through this as quickly as we can and get this to a place where what the board's going to do and support. I feel like that, given where we are and given the conversation we've had tonight and the interest that's been shown by other people and what we need to accomplish here, that this is a piece of what we need to do. This isn't all that we're talking about. This isn't all that we need to do. I think that, and hopefully, I'm not trying to say this to push off anything having to do with this position. I think we need to decide this position as soon as possible. Because I think that for you, it is a linchpin, and I think that, you just need to hear what's been said tonight, the questions been asked, and think about, kind of how we can move forward with this and propose this in a way that is going to do what you need it to do and be something that everybody feels good about. I think that's possible. But beyond that, then there is, so there's that role. There's funding for maybe one, maybe two, depending on how that works in, the way that you described it. Other assistance that could flow to the schools. And, hopefully, when we get to item 11 in just a minute, we'll talk about how, as we talk to the councils, we can really start to have conversations about what is it that the councils want to see happen that's a school level kind of focus or issue or way that we can do intervention, things that enhance the learning that's going on in our schools, and be able to be supportive of that too. So this is not like we're trying to find one silver bullet that's going to affect every single thing. This is a part of a bigger umbrella that we're going to have to create to make all this stuff happen.
And I think it's worth noting that I get the unique position of having the broadest view among student, parent, teacher, administrator, central office, staff. And it's a fun position to be in, quite honestly. It is an honorable position to be in. It is one that's quite humbling in a way. And in taking that perspective, I am the only one in the district that gets to have that perspective on how things work, how puzzle pieces fit, and how we move things forward. And inevitably, there will never be a decision that I will make that will have 100% of district support. That would be rare, unless, well, that's not true. We do another raise, I guarantee we can get 100% of support. Short of that, there will be some folks who may not see it initially, they may not disagree, and it can turn out that I'm dead wrong. It's also possible that I'm right, and that the way in which the puzzle pieces that are potentially fit together actually do fit in that way. And I hope that as our conversation moves forward, that we can all withstand both those folks who might come out vehemently in favor and those folks that might be vehemently against, because any decision that we make, that's why we're here at this table, is for those hard decisions.
Right. Yeah, and I think that we just have to keep that spirit. And to understand too, I mean, you talk about 100% in support of the raise. Given the evidence that we've just seen, I've wondered, myself, that $90,000 that we put toward a 1% raise, could that have been 2 more interventionists? I mean, I think that you can't look at those numbers and not feel like that how we allocate resources, that you just kind of ask about the pieces of the puzzle, that you wonder about how things could fit, and do we have enough feet on the ground? Do we have enough people with kids to be able to meet the needs that are so big in our district? So I think we're all trying to wrestle through that in a very honest way too, and figure out, where we go with that stuff. So this is not I don't think this is a personal thing in any way, or second guessing, or anything that's about us not respecting your role or anything else. This is just limited resources, big problems, big issues, big needs. How do we do that? And I think we all want to work together toward that. And I think we've made strides in that direction, and we will continue to. So you've kind of heard the conversation we've heard. We'll keep plowing ahead on this thing. Anybody else have anything else they want to say on item 10, secondary?
So are we thinking that, based on kind of what we've told you, that we will maybe wrap some of that into the job description, that we'll be able to see something before Monday's meeting? Is that what we're thinking, or?
I'll try and get something.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
So are we saying we want that on the agenda on Monday?
I mean,
I don't know, that's where I was asking, what is our timeline?
I'd like to see it on the agenda.
yeah, I think that we'll, so after tonight, I'll get with Keith and we'll talk about kind of where this stands and how he feels about a job description that he can put out, and, try to get it on Monday night.
I'm going to recommend that we have more than one board person in that conversation. I just like to have 2 different perspectives, or another perspective, and that we can round out these things. That's just my request. I mean, if Kate wants to do it, or Paige wants to do it, Susan, whoever, I think having 2 minds.
This is not going to be, I'm not going to collaborate with Keith on the job description. I'm just going to call him up tomorrow and ask him, do you have something that you want to put on Monday's agenda. If you want to have somebody else listening on that phone call, I'll record it, but I don't think that there's any need.
The way I took the conversation is that, never mind. The only request I have is that item 11, we move to next Monday. It's 10 after 9, we've been here for 3 hours.
Can we just try to cover one thing about that topic and make it very brief? We just had a question when Keith and I were talking about this agenda and looking ahead. We had in the past talked about having the middle school and high school councils meet with us in 1 month, and then in the subsequent month have the elementary school councils meet with us. We felt like that it was important to have this conversation tonight so we could kind of all wrap our heads around test scores and give the councils time for that also to seep in and be something that they can consider as well. But that it probably didn't make sense, or might not make sense, to put off conversations so that one happened in November and another happened in December. So we had talked about possibly having one group come talk to us at the work session in November and the other group come talk to us at the board meeting in November, so that we would be able to cover that entire waterfront in November and not have a group that waits until almost Christmas break to have a conversation like that. So I just want to know if that sounds like a good approach. And then that really was, I think that we know what the purpose of the meeting is, so I think that we can go forward from there. Keith, is there anything else on that? So, item 12, other, does anybody have anything else?
Can I add just a little bit of a layman perspective of being a classroom teacher, moving into the administrative perspective of him needing this position and then talking about the coaching component? As an elementary principal, having come out of the classroom, you're focusing on the standards as a classroom teacher. As an administrator now with the PGES, that's a major focus of the things you're doing, plus these other things. Those coaches then provide those classroom teachers that support. And if you're talking about the middle school and high school, you're now talking about very specific classes, something that your administrators are not going to have at school, that skill. So then having that next layer, which in my case is Judy with my instructional coaches and my math interventionists, it frees me up to do some of the other work that I got to do. High school, middle school, I can't imagine can do all those things. I couldn't do it at the elementary level without that support. So, and I know that's not a social studies. I know Ben's not a social studies. Not, well, maybe he is. I don't know. He may be, but he's got, they have to have those resources in play. I don't know if that helps at all.
Okay, thanks.
I'm just curious, how many coaches interventionists are at the elementary level? Because we don't have any at all.
How many did you just show? How many of them?
Three coaches.
Three coaches.
Three coaches.
Total?
Then you.
Total and 2
Got it.
interventionists.
So there's 2 interventionists, 3 coaches.
I have rarely seen in any high school setting, at least not a curriculum coach within the building as a position.
That's
I
what I used to do.
I mean, in past years, I've been in a dozen schools a year, and I never recall not seeing a curriculum coach at the secondary level.
There were some. I think the year before I came, we had Becky Fuquay and Liz Irwin were there. The year before I came, so the past year, my first year here, we didn't have any of that. So I have to say, I kind of breathed a little sigh of relief that we were able to maintain kind of what we did, because our scores went down because Explorer sunk. Whereas it's kind of like even out. But I was really worried because we didn't have, the teachers would say, Becky Fuquay was here, she helped me so much. Matt and I just talk about that all the time. And I'm like, well, I'm here, I'll help you, Matt, because I'm a math person. But I don't know the answers either. I know that it's very hard. We have a plan. We are looking at data. We can report to you progress, I'm hoping, in December. You're having a great question about that, Lonnie, about we don't want to wait every year and just get a blast of information and worry about it, then have another blast and worry about it. What are we doing? It's like going to Weight Watchers and weighing once a year. You got to weigh in all the time, see where you are.
I prefer the weigh once a year.
Well, that's what I do too. So we are developing that ourselves. So I'm with some 7th grade teachers today. It was an excellent conversation. They are on it. But that's what I did as my job as a curriculum coach when I was at SCAPA. And they didn't argue any help either, but at least now they did. And I met with teachers and we did the data planning, we did the standards, we aligned the assessments and standards. I know how to do all that. I just don't know if I have time. So the question is, do I want somebody in my building that I tell what to do, or do I want somebody above me that just comes in and does it without me having to fool with it? And then I would be worried, are they doing what I want them to do?
I already have somebody that works with me as work.
Yeah, and so I don't know, all that depends on the job description, which is kind of the instruction, so.
Well, I know in some schools, the assistant principal takes on the role of the curriculum resource administrator.
If they have three, like in Jessamine County, they've got 3 administrators. You know,
Right.
and we
Well,
kind of do with Mr. Drew.
So I want to assure all the principals who are here tonight, and even the one who's not, that, you know, we want to hear all this stuff, and we want to pay attention to how we build that support so that it gets to where it needs to get, that it filters down, and that it makes great results for kids. And that we can even do more than just the basics. So we're going to be talking to you guys about that in November. You got notice tonight that at one meeting or the other in November, we're going to have your councils come, and we want to, you know, we really want to hammer away at this issue of achievement, hammer away at this issue of kids being excited about learning, and make this school district have the swagger and mojo and results to back it up that all of us who are here tonight and have been here for, I don't even want to count on my watch.
3 hours and 17 minutes.
You know, that we can be proud of that. So we'll be working in those directions, and thanks for that information. Anybody else have an other? Just so everybody knows, I had passed to Steve tonight, and we had, at a meeting previously, Steve had volunteered to be our legislative kind of contact with KSBA about what's coming down the pike. They sent me a letter this week just saying they needed to know who on the board was going to be that legislative liaison for the upcoming General Assembly. So I passed the paperwork to Steve since he's such a great volunteer and helpful on that front. So he's going to continue to fill that role. I didn't think anybody would want to arm wrestle him for that. So that's my only other. Anybody else?
I just want to thank everybody who came out. It feels really good to have this many people involved and interested in what's going on behind the scenes. And makes it not feel like such a heavy burden to know that lots of people are probably staying awake at night worrying about these things, and that we are, just really feels like a good team effort to try to solve some really big problems in our district. So thanks for everybody else who stayed up here for 3 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah, and next time if I know the meeting's going to last that long, I'll work in a potty break. I apologize. All right, that's everything. I'll say we're adjourned. Thank you.